On this episode, we discuss Madam Web.
But this time of year, it's more like Maximum Fun Drive Web.
I didn't even say maximum properly.
Ahead of time, I got confused about what I was doing. Madam Fun Drive Web.
Okay. Everyone, and welcome to the Flophouse. I'm Dan McCoy.
I'm Stuart Wellington.
And I'm Elliot Kalin. And before we introduce our very special guest for this episode, it's a total mystery to you unless you have read the description of the episode ahead of time.
The title, in fact.
The title. I wanted to remind our listeners that it is Max Fun Drive, air horn noise, air horn noise, air horn noise.
Pew, pew, pew.
Thank you.
Is that,
From now,
should I do the air horn noise? Is that why I'm here?
Yes, that's why you're here.
You're the Michael Winslow of this episode.
That's a different kind of horn.
Mm-hmm.
But it does have air.
From now through March 29th, this is the time of year when we celebrate Maximum Fun members and the money that they pledge in order to make it possible for us to do this show and feed our families. I'll be telling you more about Max Fun Drive and how to pledge and what bonus gifts you'll get from pledging later in the episode. But if you absolutely, positively cannot wait to get involved with the drive, then pause this episode right now, go to MaximumFun.org/join, and you can line up, sign up, and re-enlist today for as little as $5 a month as a supporter of us and the Maximum Fun family of podcasts. $5 a month means you're paying only $1.25 per episode. That's how much a comic book cost when I started collecting them in 1992. And speaking of comic books, we're going to talk about Madam Web today. So once you're done at MaximumFun.org/join, come right back because we're about to introduce our special Madam Web-themed special guest. And that guest is, of course, Zhubin Parang, co-EP of The Daily Show. Longtime listeners to the Flophouse will know him as Tanzer Silverview. Zhubin, how does it feel to be yourself for once and not a character on the show?
Oh, it feels great. Thank you guys for. I forgot how terrible it is to watch a bad movie.
You only put good things in your eyes.
It's also it's the first day of spring today, which is the Iranian New Year. So I really appreciate you guys making me take one of the most important days in my people's year to come talk about the worst movie I've seen in a very long time.
Sour cherries.
I could be eating sour cherries right now. I could be dancing around the sofa I have seen. I could be other cultural references.
I thought this was a Madam Web episode, not a Dune episode, okay? I don't know what all this stuff is all about.
Oh, wow. Wow, if that wasn't such a good movie, I'd be very offended by the racist.
Now, Zhubin, I mentioned that you are a Madam Web-themed guest. I don't have a fact to back that up. So can you rationalize why you are the guest on the Madam Web episode?
Yeah. Yes. I would also prefer to be bitten to death by spiders than to have watched Madam Web.
Well, let me just say, the real reason is, of course, that because it is Max Fun Drive, we're pulling out the stops. This is our equivalent of May sweeps, and everyone has been clamoring for a main feed Zhubin episode. Zhubin, for a long time, has been sequestered to our bonus content. If you listen to this and you love Zhubin and you're a $5 a month or more donor, you can listen to him do all our role-playing episodes that we did for bonus content. We wanted to have him back on a normal episode after popular demand.
Finally have Zhubin not as a sort of medieval nobleman or as a rich guy from the 30s or an arrogant dog.
But as a human being. Kind of takes those same thematic character beats and stretches them way beyond the point of believability or humor.
Yeah. That's why we're talking about Madam Web today, guys.
I appreciate you guys cutting me in on 80% of these Maximum Fun profits. Any dollar you guys can raise, most of it will go to me, so I really appreciate it.
You can take the boy out of Tanzer, but can't take the Tanzer out of the boy.
Zhubin, who started at The Daily Show at the same time as me and has risen to the highest highs through the ranks, and I have a podcast.
I am actually the role of Jon Stewart now at The Daily Show.
He plays Jon Stewart. They didn't actually get him back.
No, I just played
cast
him.
Mission Impossible.
He's in the makeup chair for hours before every episode. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, boy. What do we do on this podcast, Dan? Well, what we do is we watch a bad movie and then we talk about it. A movie that has been either critically or commercially dismissed. We see whether we agree, basically. That's a good way of putting it. And we watched Madam Web, a movie that may still be in theaters as of this.
It is.
Flophouse in the aisles. Right?
It was just as we're recording this. It was just released to streaming too, so I think it's available in both methods.
That's actually how I watched it on streaming. Because it allowed me to not just double time, but quadruple time it, as is my want.
No, so this is.
And
let me tell you, it still was not fast enough for
we should
bad.
Kick you off of this. Zhubin, for listeners who don't know, if you know Zhubin, you know that he watches movies at double speed because he doesn't have the time for them. Yeah, Zhubining, and it is. I find it appalling.
This is now as a film
Zhubin Parang, who once said to me, Alien's not a good movie because there isn't music to tell me how to feel in some of the scenes.
It is a very dull movie when she's just wandering around the halls of this spaceship like she's looking for a phone she dropped. It's not at all
a cat,
scary.
A furry phone, a cat.
Yeah, Zhubin was like, Under the Skin is great when you Zhubin it. It just flies by. It's like guys walking in and getting sucked into pits.
Girl is going around and then gets burned to death. It's a pretty cool movie.
So glad I could watch Killers of the Flower Moon, a trim hour 50 minutes.
Would you say, having watched Madame Web, though, Elliot, that some movies may be worth double, quadruple timing through?
I mean, all movies are worth quadruple timing through, right?
Worth quadruple timing.
Actually, to be honest, there have been times when I have fast-forwarded through movies, but they are usually like movies that are 6 or 7 hours long, where I'm like, oh, this is a long shot of something going on. But Madame Web, you want to soak it all up. There's a lot of that's an experience that you want to enjoy at the speed it's intended, maybe even half speed.
Every strand of that web.
I will tell you, there are certain action scenes that I had to slow down to normal time because the editing was so confusing that I had no idea.
Yeah, that's true.
It was so
where.
confusing to watch it at double speed. He had to reduce himself to mere normal speed.
So before we get
Stuart
further
and I saw in the theaters where double speed was not an option.
You couldn't yell up to the projector, spin it faster, spin the film through faster.
I bet everyone in the audience would have been like, yes, we're on the same side.
So, Dan, when you saw this, were you alone in the theater? Because I was alone, and the person checking my ticket was like, one for Madame Web? Yes.
It was a pretty empty theater because it was late in the Madame Web run, although not that late because it's still around, but pretty late. And but there was like a group of 4 guys who sat fairly next to me, and I'm like, these guys are going to be a little too rowdy. They're going to be a little too we're making fun of Madame Web. And I'm like, look, I understand this late in the run. Everyone knows what Madame Web is. If you're going to see it for that reason, I get it. Chill out a little. Don't be annoying. They were mostly okay.
We have a mutual friend whose name I won't say because she's famously averse to any kind of publicity.
Okay,
but she went and saw it opening night with her husband and was saying the theater just had a blast laughing at the movie.
Yeah. I'm sure,
and I feel like that was the only context to prove
I
it
had a
properly
blast
enjoyed.
laughing at the movie, but let's talk about the movie, shall we?
Wait, I hate to delay it even more, Stuart, but one thing I want to say before we get into the movie is, the writers of this movie, Matt Sazama and Brooke Sharpless, we have covered every single movie that they have had produced on our podcast. And when this movie was out, Matt's filmography was going around on Twitter being like, can you imagine being this guy? And I just want to say, he's someone I got to know a little bit on the picket line during the strike. We walked together a lot of times. He was very took it well that we had covered all of his movies on the podcast. I was like, oh, I did this bad movie podcast. And he goes, oh, you probably have done one of mine. I'm like, oh, probably not. And then we went through he just mentioned his filmography. I'm like, we did that one. We did that one. We did that one. And he seemed like a really great guy. I really like talking to him. And I think these guys are much more talented writers than the finished versions of these films would have it come out. So I want to give them I want to ahead of time be like, don't blame them. Blame the director and the producers.
This film clearly went through a Cuisinart before it arrived in theaters.
Yes.
It has been chopped and
well, and you look at Dakota Johnson's interviews, and she's like, the script that I signed to do is not the script that we ended up making. So I imagine there was originally at some point a good version of this movie, or at least a better version of this movie. But don't blame the writers. That's my rule always. Don't blame the writers. DBTW.
Also, just as a writer who has never had any movie that he's written made into a movie, I have nothing but respect for writers who have actually gone through that gauntlet. So yes, absolutely.
You didn't write Anatomy of a Fall?
I did, but another movie with the exact same plot and characters was actually made.
Wow.
And title,
It was called what? The Staircase? Was that the miniseries? Okay.
Mine was just the sound effect that you make when you slip on a banana peel. Like, zoop, boom.
It was the story of that
entire
sound?
It was, yeah. But it was the plot was
slip on that banana peel again. Swoop. You've got something there.
Weirdly enough, also features 50 Cent's PIMP in the soundtrack. Okay, so Madam Web, we open in the Peruvian Amazon, 1973. We meet a pregnant naturalist who is searching for a spider.
Now, when you say naturalist, you mean like a scientist who studies nature, not a nudist?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what she does outside of the context of this one
naturist
scene.
is the word you're looking for there.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So she is searching for a spider that she believes will cure a lot of diseases and problems and whatnot. She cites a local legend of Las Arañas, men who have been bitten by this spider and have special spider powers.
And I want to say that all of this early dialogue is doing heavy double duty as like exposition. Like the guy who's with her, who like spoiler alert, will become like villainous soon. Is like
a guy named Ezekiel Sims.
Yeah,
right. That's not a scary man name.
Not at all evil name of Ezekiel Sims. Yeah,
but he says things like, you know, like, oh, that is why you hired me to be your security. Like, and I'm like, okay, well, thank you for clarifying your relationship to one another. But
he's also, I mean, he's from the start so villainous that it calls into question the judgment of the mom who allowed him to be her security. It's very, it's so bad that when he pulls the gun out halfway through, it's like, well, you should have seen this coming, lady.
Yeah. Every time he says anything, he starts like twiddling with his mustache, and you're like, oh, do you have to? Is this a nervous tick? So
I will say it is not the best showcase for Tahar Rahim, the star of A Prophet, a movie that he's much better in.
Well, especially since all of his dialogue appears to be ADR'd later on.
Yes, that's true. Well, I was like, the whole time I was watching it, I was like, did they dub every single thing that he says? Like it's. They might have. I don't know.
It's great. It's amazing. It adds to the like hallucinatory nature of this entire
I started
film.
just like watching characters' lips in this movie after a while to be like, was this the original line or did they change it? Like, there's a lot of stuff that's delivered back to camera. But anyway.
Yes.
So of course she finds the spider. She's very excited. Her security guard Sims, of course, turns the table, kills the entire team. Steals some of her research, I think, steals the spider and shoots her. She is then saved by these mythical Spider-Men, Las Arañas, who take her to a pool, have her bitten by a spider, and she gives birth. Boom. Madam Web. Movie done.
They seem to speak English better than than Ezekiel does.
Yeah.
The guys who live in the Peruvian jungle and have spider powers.
You don't know all the abilities that the spiders give you. Maybe it gives you.
This actually, let me ask you a question about this because the entire time I was just wondering what is the relationship with Madam Web and Spider-Man? Because I thought,
well, Ellie, do you want to field this one before we get too far into this? Because you were gonna maybe
I'll talk a little bit about
the
these
comics.
characters. Here's the thing: in adapting Madam Web for the film, they have drastically changed the character in a way that it's funny because there's two Madam Webs in the comics. There's the original one who is an elderly lady who is blind, who is paralyzed, and she can see the future because she can see along the web of life or whatever. And she would show up in the comics and basically annoy Spider-Man by hinting at things that were going to happen, but not really tell him what was going to happen. And there's a great two-part story where the Juggernaut, I don't remember why, wants to kill Madam Web, and Spider-Man is pulling out all the stops to try to stop him, and he's way more powerful. It's one of the great two-issue Spider-Man stories. There's a second Madam Web. That Madam Web eventually goes away. There's a second Madam Web who is the character that Sydney Sweeney plays in this movie, but she kind of took over that role. But she looks like the Dakota Johnson version of Madam Web that shows up at the end of the movie kicking some amazing sunglasses. But which we'll get to
that.
But so it's like they took the two versions of Madam Web and combined them while also jettisoning all the backstory of the actual Madam Web. So in the comics, she is an ally of Spider-Man's, but also an irritating ally of Spider-Man's, because she'll be like, the web of life, I feel the strumming along the threads. You should know that danger is coming. And he's like, can you just tell me? Like, can you just tell me what's going to happen? You know?
Yeah, this sounds like I was because I was watching a bad movie last night that Marina Sirtis showed up in. I was complaining about Counselor Troy on Star Trek, how she was supposed to be the empath on board, but she'd always just be like, he seems angry, Captain. Like, yeah, he's already threatening the Enterprise. What are you doing here?
And the other thing about Madam Web is that in the comics, the original one looks just like Aunt May. And so when I first started reading it as a kid, I read the issues out of order. I'm like, oh, eventually they'll reveal that this is Aunt May. No, it's just another old lady. The same way that every old lady in the Archie comics looks like Miss Grundy, who also has the same face as Jughead. So so it's weird that they're probably together. They probably have a relationship. But I guess people who are attracted to each other sometimes look like each other. That's the thing that
makes it a little weird.
Creates the attraction.
This movie felt like they, for trademark reasons, could not give Madam Web the Spider-Man powers. So they had to go very metaphorical with what a web was.
I think a little bit.
They really extrapolate what the power of seeing the future can be, such as when she, we'll get to it, splits into 3 energy beings to save people, which is not a thing she can do in the comics, as far as I can remember.
For trademark reasons, they can't have Spider-Man in the movie. This is, of course, one of the many of the Sony's Spider-Man without Spider-Man Spider-Verse.
I'm gonna tell
Spider-Man
everybody. Spider-Man does appear in the movie
in baby form.
He does show up in baby form.
Though.
That's it. Well, is Spider-Man Peter Parker or is Spider-Man the Mask, Dan? This is the question we have to ask ourselves,
guys.
They don't even say the name though. I assume that's also for.
Well, why would they say the name? The character doesn't exist yet.
No, they don't say Peter. Like they never say. Like they make a big deal about guessing the name, and they never say it.
And they say, and they. Well, we'll get to. We'll get to that stuff.
Okay, so it is New York, 2002. That's right. We're in a period piece, guys. 1 year before Stuart Wellington moves to Brooklyn. Characters make reference to this multiple times.
They're like, do you think in a year Stuart will be here?
Things are about to pop off.
They're driving by apartments. They're like, Stuart's going to live there soon.
He's going to live there. So we meet Cassie and Ben, a pair of EMTs played by Dakota Johnson and Adam Scott.
Exactly the actors you want in a movie where they're going to provide maximum emotion and maximum intensity. And I think they're both great in other things, but they're a baffling casting as the 2 leads in a superhero film.
Yes.
If this is a movie where the 2 of them are friends who just can't ever get together until the end, now that is a movie that I would watch.
Their relationship is kind of set up like that.
Yes.
She's a bit of a commitment phobe because she comes from a foster family. She lost her mother, obviously, in the Amazon.
Now, that's Australian for beer family.
And he is ex-military, which I don't know if I buy that from Adam Scott, but that's okay.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of different people are in the military, Stu. They're not all hulking,
I don't know. I saw him
guys.
on a jet ski one time shooting piranhas out of the water. It was pretty tough.
Okay, I rescind my comment.
And he is
scrub it from the record.
He does have 2 personalities in the same head, and often being in the military, you kind of don't know who you are after a certain point.
That's
sure.
True. They have a little bit of a flirty chemistry, as mentioned before. Cassie lives alone, although she does feed a stray cat milk every once in a while. I'm like, don't do that. You're going to give it diarrhea.
Stuart, does her New York apartment have exposed brick walls?
Of course it does. She has a sick-ass apartment.
It's a great apartment. Yeah. That's why they had to set it. They had to set it 20 years ago so that it was conceivable that she could afford that apartment on her salary.
We should mention that the earlier version of this script also was apparently set in the 90s, which makes a lot more sense in certain ways, particularly later on when she gets on a plane, even though she's a wanted criminal without any trouble. But
that's true. Right after 2001, that was hard to do. But Dan, if it was set in the 90s, they couldn't have so prominently displayed the song "Toxic" as they do later.
True. Okay.
That is also another question I had. That is also a big question.
Is this like Madam Web's visions where she's seeing moments of the future?
That's right.
Exactly,
Before we get furthermore, I also had no idea the entire time why this movie was set in 2003.
The only reason it is so baby Spider-Man can be born.
Yeah,
that's it.
You gotta see that baby Spider-Man.
That's a 10,000% the reason.
That is the reason. Jesus. Well, the villain's superpower here seems very. It felt like it was like copying like Enemy of the State. It felt like it was copying all of the
that too. Yeah.
NSA stuff. That well, let's continue this.
I mean, that's not really a superpower, but I mean, it's one of the resources he has at his disposal.
Yeah, his superpower is to the only thing that has aged about him in that 30 years is that his hair has gray tips now.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I look better than I did. And my hair has plenty of gray tips. Okay. On the course of her day, she crosses paths with 3 girls that are going to be important later on in the movie. Maddie, Anya, and Julia, played by 2 actresses who I don't particularly recognize, and Sydney Sweeney, of course. They are going to be important later on. Okay. Cassie goes through a box of stuff that she got from her birth mother.
Not like a Dune pain test Gom Jabbar type box. This is
I
just
mean, in a way,
it
is a pain test because
an emotional
she's going through
pain test.
memories. Yeah.
Sure.
So she
an animal
no,
would
like,
bite off its own hand not to relive these memories, but a human can relive them with some light therapy.
Man,
okay.
I guess fucking Tom Brokaw just showed up. It also includes specifically her spider journal that she took with her down to the Amazon. So that's
never explains who boxed all that stuff up and gave it to her.
The Spider-Man.
The Spider-Man.
And it is
I mean,
weird.
the fact that she's born in a cave in the jungle and the midwives are all spider-powered men in a jungle, and yet she has documents, paperwork that I always wonder if did they fill out a birth certificate in the cave?
And
who held on to that box while she was a baby?
And the way she goes through the box at this point in her life, you're like, she would have gone through that so many times as a child, right? It's not like this would all. Yeah. She would have committed it all to memory. But whatever.
It's like the scene in Hereditary when she goes through her mom's stuff and there's just photo albums of her being a witch, and it's like, did you never go through your mom's stuff?
Yeah, man, that rules. Okay, so the next day there's a accident on a bridge. She and Cassie and Ben go to rescue the guy, and in the process, the car containing Cassie goes over the bridge, and she goes underwater and is trapped, drowns, and then wakes up in the water and has this like vision quest, right?
And I want to mention
falling Pepsi letters.
Before she goes into the water, they are pulling a guy from this car, and then as if the car is a living creature that is trying to trap prey, when she gets too close to it, the door snaps shut and it falls backwards into the river, as if this is like this is Mimic, and it's learned how to become the shape of a car as opposed to like a man in a hat and a coat. Like it's so funny the way it happens.
And when she's underwater, this is where we see kind of like the webs coming out underwater from her, like shattered. Like, I'm looking for you for confirmation. Is this true?
Yeah. There's like energy lines.
Trigger her power, I think.
Like the windshield spider webs.
Yeah.
And you're
there's a lot of stuff, as has been mentioned in many write-ups about this movie. There's a lot of unnecessarily on the nose web iconography or web design elements, and it's like the scene in High Anxiety where the guy goes, it's like I'm caught in some kind of web and there's a shadow of a web over him. It's like that for a whole movie.
But I wanted to say, like, sorry, I needed a refresher. Like I looked again this morning at stuff, but I saw this movie in theaters before I went away for a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was back. It was a
really early
special
cut.
preview. Yeah.
But I wanted to say, like, I like that web imagery. Like, I like how sort of goofy it is. Like, there's stuff in this movie that looks bad, like the Spider-Man jumping from trees to trees, holding. But
this looks at least like there was some thought put into it, some visual thought. But they go so far with it that it stops being a visual motif and it becomes like. The movie is elbowing you in the ribs, constantly going,
yes.
Get it?
Which is what I want out of this movie.
Well,
I want it to a subtlety I do not want from.
Yes, that's true. If we're watching this movie the way that Madam Web will now be watched forever, and not the way that it was originally intended, then yes, it's the right choice to make.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
her last name is Webb. Let's not also forget that part.
Wait a minute. What? Hold on a second. Oh,
Biff
I didn't even notice. You're right.
Okay, but that's the thing. They don't even mention that her last name is Webb until like halfway through the fucking movie, and I let out such a cackle in the empty theater. It's so great. I love it. Cassandra Webb. Okay.
I mean, and that comes from the character. That's not a thing they invented. Like, that's from the character. No, but I feel like you can get away with that stuff.
I'm not laughing at the movie. I'm laughing because it's a funny thing to wait to reveal.
But it's like a...
that's Madam Web.
That's how she got her name.
Because it reminds me of the moment I love in Spider-Man 2 when J. Jonah Jameson goes, his name's Otto Octavius, ends up with 8 arms. What's the odds? Like, where they just kind of put a point on it, but they do it in such a funny way.
Oh, man. Best superhero movie of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Ben rescues her. Turns out she was legally dead for 3 minutes. I mean, I don't know legally. I think I'm just saying that. Like, it's not like a judge showed up and he's like, I'm going to delete it.
Is that how it works?
Sorry, you're dead now legally. That means laws don't apply to you anymore. You can do whatever you want.
She has moments of like deja vu in the conversation, and that's where we're starting to see, oh, maybe she has powers. And then she also makes a comment, I just want to go home and watch Idol, which I loved. Thank you. Thank you for being very specific about the time period. And that would have been like the second season of American Idol. That was a big season. Okay.
She is the one thing that I like about this character, but I can see how it would make other people laugh, is how, and this is the Dakota Johnson of it, I guess, that she's so totally blasé about everything.
Yes.
There's the scene earlier on where she has saved someone's life, and a little kid is like, I drew a picture for you, and she's like, what do I do with this? Like, where do I put this? Like, I
thought that was very funny.
Yeah.
Adam Scott's like, just take it and throw it away later. She's like, I can't even fold it. It's like cardboard.
I thought that was very funny. Yeah,
that was a funny moment.
She's such a inspired choice for this character. I unabashedly love Dakota Johnson performances. She's like one of my favorites working today. She's so like kind of airy and wispy, and I do not understand what's going on. Like, she is my dream Flophouse guest because it would either be the best or absolute worst episode. She would destroy any attempt at having bits.
Yeah.
Oh man, she's so.
I described this movie to friends as a movie about a lady who doesn't want to hang out with three teenagers.
Yeah, that's kind of it.
That's what I enjoyed about it.
And it's kind of interesting that they cast Sydney Sweeney also in this movie, who I think that's also kind of her vibe, is this I don't quite get it. Although she does
she's
play
playing against that
well.
in this. She's not playing that type of character. And although it opens
much to her discredit. I think not to her discredit, but it is not fit her either.
Yeah, it's bad casting for the character that they want her to play. But the way it's played, there's scenes in here where it's just like, I love it. It's like she and Dakota Johnson are in a contest to see who can put less energy into their line readings.
It's great. Okay.
That's my thing about Dakota Johnson is she seems like every character is like a person who does not want to be in the movie. And I feel
she's an actress who should be an actress from the 1970s. Like, she should be making movies in the 1970s, maybe the 1980s, or maybe even the 1990s where it's like slacker movies. But she should be in movies that are about characters that cannot get the energy up to do things and are just kind of drifting. But they don't make a lot of those movies anymore. So instead, she's going to play Madam Web, a superhero who can see the future.
Action.
Yeah.
She has to wait by the phone for Luca to give her a call. Okay. So,
you're right.
We cut across town to the opera, where now a gray-haired Ezekiel Sims is attending an opera with a date.
Now, is he with her, or is he picking her up at the opera?
I thought he picked her up at the opera.
I thought he picked her up at the opera, yeah.
He's using his spider powers of future clairvoyance to be like, what's the best way to pick up this lady?
And I gotta say, I never thought about it. In all the years that I attended the Metropolitan Opera with my dearly departed grandma, I never thought of picking up ladies while I was there. Maybe it was because I was with her that it never occurred to me, but it just didn't seem like the right location to do that.
He would be beating you to the punch, I assume, right? You look at a lady and be like, well, then your grandmother would be there already talking to her.
Exactly.
Yeah, your grandma's the Sigma male in the relationship. Yeah. So he takes this woman back to his fancy high-rise apartment that does feature a spider tank that has that spider from before. That's an old-ass fucking spider, right?
That spider's been around. I mean, I have to assume that that's a descendant of the original spider, right?
I mean, they're super spiders. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they last a long time.
You're both right.
It might just be that spider's been like a 40,000-year-old spider.
You know what you know what it is? I bet that spider gives birth to a new spider and is reincarnated in that new spider, and so it's the same soul in a new body. Anyway, we explained it. You're welcome, movie.
So they have an unforgettable night of magic together. Afterwards, while he sleeps, he has a dream where he is attacked by 3 spider women featuring different powers.
Visited by 3 spiders who teach him the true meaning of webs.
Spider of Christmas future, the spider of Christmas present, and the spider of Christmas past. What day is it? It's Christmas Day, sir. Get me the biggest spider you can find. What?
The one as big as me?
So he's visited
Tiny
by
Tim,
these.
here's a spider. What? Look, boss, you can't come to my house and give a spider to my kid. What are you doing? I'm sorry.
Where'd you even find that?
I do love the idea of a Christmas Carol where the ghosts all kick his ass in different life teaching lessons.
Yeah.
Well, that was what was always so funny about Christmas Carol to me, is that, you know, they gave him the soft sell first, and then the bad cop comes in, and he's like, oh, yeah? Well, look at this. You're going to die. And I'm like, okay, well, that got through to me.
See, the issue that I have with that story is that now Ebenezer Scrooge is like, now that I'm good, I'll never die. And so I assume the Ghost of Christmas Future has to show up and be like, no, hold on. Let's explain what's going to happen.
More people at your funeral. To be clear, that was what
you'll be
I was
loved.
trying to say.
Yeah. It all ends in the stone cold ground no matter what.
This moment when you first see these three women in costume, this was one of the moments where I burst out laughing.
It's great.
Like, I just couldn't handle it. It looks hilarious. It looks hilarious. And I will say this, the original costume for Sydney Sweeney's character, so she's playing the character, for some reason they've named her Julia Cornwall. In the comics, she's Julia Carpenter. She is the second Spider-Woman. She has the costume that inspires Spider-Man's black costume. She's got a great costume in the comics. It's really fantastic. And the way they've done it here does not quite work, and they all look ridiculous in their costumes. All three of the Spider-Women. Unless, prove me wrong, guys. Do you think they look amazing?
I feel like
dynamic?
it looks less ridiculous for Ezekiel because over the course of the dream, they beat him up and toss him out a window where he dies. So
yes,
maybe
that's true.
For him, they're not that silly.
They're not that silly considering they are a life and death threat. But just the first moment you see them, it is very funny to me.
There's the moment where you're like, were they expecting this to be like a big crowd pleaser, stand up and cheer thing?
But that's my problem with it is that you barely saw them, except in these like very brief flashbacks. I felt so bad for Sydney Sweeney and her buddies that they had to like dress up in those costumes and do all this kind of choreography fight stuff for maybe, I would say, 7 seconds of screen time.
Maybe 7 seconds.
Yeah, that's true.
I know they were trying to set up like another movie, but this felt like a real. Like, they felt they were promising throughout the movie, like, oh, man, when they get those costumes.
When they show up in costume. Well, that's the other thing about it, is it does promise that by the end of the movie, you're going to see them in costume, which, spoilers, does not happen.
We'll get to it, but that is one of the more baffling decisions to me, the end of this movie, the lack of... I mean, this movie literally gets to the fireworks factory, but the metaphorical fireworks factory is not reached.
Yeah.
Okay. So he wakes up from his death dream. He wakes up his date, who he explains the situation that he's been having this reoccurring dream where he always dies. It haunts him. So his only recourse is to steal face recognition software from the NSA that no one else knows about. He's going to steal that information so that he can then murder these young women.
So he can,
this is the moment where the date says, but wait, I work for the NSA. And then he, of course, gets her password and poisons her using his spider poison. This was a hilarious scene because I just love a scene where the villain explains his entire like murder plan to a stranger.
And also when he looks over at her stuff, her ID badge is lying right there. I guess maybe it came out when she went for her gun or something, but it looks like she went. No. It looks like before they had sex, she laid down her clutch, took out her NSA ID, put it out, took out her other things, laid it out, and was like, okay, now that you know my background, I'm ready for us to have this post-opera sex.
Well, on top of that, like, I mean, I don't, it may surprise you to know that I'm not a super spy, but shouldn't someone who's in
You're
the
still
NSA...
a very good spy, Dan. Maybe you have super
be like
level.
aware that there might be a honeypot situation going on. I don't know. Like, I think that this is
I thought he was aware of her being in the NSA.
Yeah, I feel like, of course he was.
No, I know. I'm saying
that
the woman
she's not aware.
Should be a little more...
No, I'm sorry. I thought she also was aware.
It's very unclear whether they have both double-tricked each other.
Yes.
But he seems to know it, and she seems to know it too.
Okay,
which is strange.
This is also the dialogue in this movie is so bad. He gets up from his dream and turns to her and says, "Do you have any idea what it's like to die every night for 20 years?" And to say that to a one-night stand, like Roger Sex feels like watching feels like this is a lot.
I don't know.
Don't overshare, bro.
He's just looking for casual.
Opera's about big emotions. It's about huge things happening to people. So she might be into it. It's also, do you have any idea what it's like to die every night for 20 years? Yeah, a lot of people have dreams where they fall down and die. Like, a lot of people. It's not...
Yeah.
Wow, look at the empathy on this guy.
Yeah,
but you wake up and you go, yeah, that was a bad dream. Anyway, let me move on. I feel like the idea that, well, I had this dream all the time. I guess it's a prophecy that I have to stop from happening.
Yeah.
Because as far as we know, he does not have fortune-telling powers the same way Madam Web does,
no,
right?
He does.
Or does he?
I thought that was
guess
pretty
that
clear.
was his fortune-telling powers.
Yeah, that's how he made his money, is that he writes those fortunes in the cookies.
He's literally telling fortunes.
So
Do you have any idea what it's like to have to come up with different ways to basically say nothing about somebody's future in 7 words or less for years?
You'll have some smiles today. Is that something?
We also
I have to come up with all the lucky numbers. That's the hardest part.
We also see him having a vision, like when he's trying to seduce the woman at the opera. He's like, okay, like there's like a little vision of like.
Cool. Okay, now that adventure's over.
You know what? I ask the stenographer to please remove my objections from the record. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's a perfect movie.
Later on, we're at a baby shower for Ben, her coworker's sister. So that's a tangled web of relationships.
You guys are routinely invited to your coworkers' siblings' baby showers, right?
I mean, I feel like they're pretty close, though.
It looks like they're friends.
Cassie has no friends, so this is the close. It makes sense. I mean, even if it was just like, look, you don't know my coworker. Can I just invite her because she needs to get out of her house? Like she never goes anywhere.
She doesn't like attachments. That's the thing. She doesn't like webs.
And her sister is like, as long as she doesn't make it super awkward and weird every single moment of the baby shower. And he goes, I cannot promise that. I apologize.
So, of course, for this relatively thankless small role, of course, they hire Emma Roberts to play the sister, the pregnant sister. There's, a little bit of banter. There's some good Pepsi product placement in this scene.
Yeah, because she is not allowed to have a beer.
Not allowed to have a beer.
Died yesterday.
And the only cure for dying yesterday, ice cold Pepsi.
Pepsi, yeah, not Coke. He goes, you were just born, so now you're part of the Pepsi generation since you just died and came back. So you need Pepsi now.
It's also such a sad advertisement for Pepsi. If you are physically unable to have a beer at the cost of death, you can have a Pepsi.
Yeah.
What's really funny, which I didn't think about until now, there's so much Pepsi product placement, and the end climax takes place at a big Pepsi Cola sign, but that's a real sign. Like that's a real landmark sign in Queens. So I wonder if people who are not from New York watch that and they're like, ugh, getting a little on the nose with the Pepsi product placement, huh? It's like, no, but that's the one real thing. That's the one. I mean, and I know.
I wonder if it's spun
Coke
off
is
from
the real
that,
thing, but still. Yeah. Or maybe Diet Pepsi's the real thing. Which one was Ray Charles singing about?
Well, that's the right one, baby.
Oh, that's right, the right one. And so what's the real one?
The real thing is an album by Faith No More.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. That Ray Charles was on. That's right. Anyway.
That's he's doing background vocals for Mike Patton.
He's like, he's like, Faith No More, you're a gospel group, right? Yeah, sure. Just Ray, just get in there. Yeah.
It's going to be epic. So they do some party games where Dakota Johnson is perfect for this, where she's like, let me tell bummer stories about my mom who died in the Amazon.
I gotta say, this one's on Cassie because it's like, put down memories of your mom, good memories of your mom for the expectant mother, and she puts a blank piece of paper.
Yeah, just don't put a paper in.
Just don't put it in, man. No one's gonna notice.
Yeah.
She's not used to going to baby showers. She doesn't know. She doesn't know how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like when somebody's clearly upset and you're like, what's wrong? They're like, nothing. And you're like, come
you really want to talk about it.
You want to talk about it.
The only thing would have been better if she wrote on the piece of paper, my mom died. That would have been the most amazing. And they're like, oh, whose is this? Cassie's like, mine. Let me tell you the story. She was studying spiders in the Amazon.
Even that would be a better choice because like the person picking it out to read would be like, oh, okay, I'll fold this quietly and put it in my pocket rather than being like, what's this?
She wants to talk about it.
Look, I was just glad they weren't playing the game where they put different foods, smear different foods on a diaper and they have to taste them and then guess what they are. That's a game I didn't want to see them play.
Elliot, in my culture, we eat our chocolate out of diapers, okay?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot that's a tenet of your
you bring it up on the
religion.
podcast.
Yeah, I forgot that's your ethnic heritage as a gross person.
As a garbage pail kid.
As a garbage pail kid,
This also is maybe too nitpicky because I just hate the dialogue so much. But
Go on.
When she says my mom died in childbirth, I get it. It's not like the most happy thing to say, but they all act as if she had just cursed the mother to dying in childbirth. They were all like, no, Chase, something.
She's like, bringing the evil eye down upon them. They all have to go, They all have to get rid of it, yeah.
Yeah. They have to go throw incense around the whole house. It felt very much like this did not need to be reacted to the way it did. She's clearly like a weird person. Everyone could have been like, oh, that's so sad. Let's move on.
Yeah. Nobody in this movie really knows how to handle social interactions. Cassie is the least of it, yeah.
During the party, she continues to have moments of deja vu similar to earlier. And then the party is interrupted. There's a fire at the industrial fireworks factory at the docks. They have to rush down there. And
this is a thing that can't ever have existed. There's no way.
During this exciting sequence where people have been injured and she's like running around and helping them, she continues to have moments of deja vu where she even sees her coworker, O'Neill, played by Mike Epps, dying in an accident. Or dying and blood's all over her hands.
Now,
there's a moment where they're dragging a guy away, and she's like, oh, I think he's actually seriously injured. And Adam Scott's like, oh, internal injuries, good catch. It's great stuff. Like, I love it.
That's the medical equivalent of on Studio 60 them glancing at a script and going, this is funny stuff. Like, how could either one of them know about that?
Yes.
But also, internal injuries, I assume, are something they know that they should check for at least before they're moving people. But one thing I think they do handle well in this movie is those first deja vu flashbacks are genuinely disorienting when she has them and then snaps back. The way they edit them the first time around is genuinely confusing in a good way. And it gets across, I think, how hellish it would be to be living in life where you kind of don't know if you are in a prophecy moment or if you were in an actual moment. But they kind of drop that eventually. She gets used to it pretty quickly. But I think that's something that I was like, I just couldn't help thinking about, like, that'd be terrible if you don't know whether you're living in a moment where you're seeing it. Yeah.
Superpower, more like super burden, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just like in Millennium. That's his power, that's his curse. Yeah, sure.
The Robbie Williams song Millennium. Of course, Mike Epps O'Neill gets in a horrible car accident and dies. She rushes over to his butt, like he's driving an ambulance away from the scene, immediately gets hit by a truck and killed.
There's something about sudden car accidents which are horrifying, but in movies they're always funny. They just suddenly happen. Yeah.
Yep, and she rushes over to the body. Adam Scott immediately runs over and drags her away, and he says, "It's okay, nothing you could have done," which is amazing. Which is also amazing from a guy who I'm guessing was like a battlefield medic. Like, he's like immediately like, he's dead. Don't worry.
Leave him. But also, it's not. I wish it'd been even more on the nose. Like, you couldn't have seen that coming in the future. It's not like you can see the future or anything like that.
If you had a premonition a few seconds about that, I would have been so upset at you for not doing something about it. But you did.
Like, arguing
as we know that's not the case.
Out of the car. Yeah.
Of course, we know that's impossible, and so you are not at fault. There is no blame, and I will not judge you at all. But again, having said it, if we were in that hypothetical situation where you did get a sudden flash of the future, and you knew he was in danger, and you didn't stop him from getting that ambulance, I would never forgive you.
Ooh,
never,
baby.
Never,
blood
ever.
on your hands.
The blood on your hands, I hope, would never wash up. Not the seas, Neptune's seas could not wash off the stain of you letting your friend die. But again, we know that that's not the case. That didn't happen. And so I should really get back to the people from the fireworks factory who injured. I shouldn't be talking this long. I just want to make it clear that you are not at blame because you don't have those powers. We can talk about this more later.
It just dissolves to his funeral, and Adam Scott is continuing that as the eulogy. And again, if she had seen this,
he's comforting their coworker's wife. Like, again, I would blame Cassie, and you should blame Cassie too, if she was able to see the future. But we know that's impossible. She doesn't have that ability, so you should not blame her. But if she did, you would never forgive her. I would
of course, that goes without saying.
Like, the only people who have that ability are the Las Arañas in the Peruvian Amazon.
We know they're in the Peruvian jungle. Even if they had seen this happening, how would they get in touch with us? They don't have a phone in the Peruvian jungle.
And she has no connection there, though we don't exactly know the story about.
Could they have used Elon Musk's Starlink to talk to us? No, it doesn't exist yet. We've never heard of him. He has yet to become even a beloved famous person, let alone a monster that people now realize was always a monster. Anyway, back to the funeral, already in progress. I'm sorry, Pastor. Continue with the service.
So, as you would imagine, Cassie's a little bit wrecked. She takes time off of work. She hides at home, eats takeout. She hangs out with her cat. She learns, she continues to have these deja vu moments, and she actually learns that by following these visions, she can actually alter aspects of the future.
Mm-hmm. She saves a bird from smashing into a window.
She saves a bird from smashing into a window. And
just more evidence that she could have saved her coworker.
Exactly. That is, I'm sure that's a small consolation there. She gets a message from Adam Scott that says, "Hey, meet me. You should come to the funeral." And she's like, "You know what? I am going to do that." And she heads to Grand Central Station. Now, meanwhile, Ezekiel Sims, it needs to find these girls, right? He's bedeviled by these girls. So who does he enlist? He enlists a girl herself, Zasha Mamet, to come help
find girls. A titular girl. So Saya Mamet, yeah.
So he gets her to show up to his high-rise apartment where she then lives for the rest of the movie. And she is a super hacker, and she has hacked into the NSA security.
Just like Neil Breen,
feed.
she has hacked into government and corporate secrets. But she doesn't. She's on call 24 hours a day. She's always there, sitting in that chair. Yeah. In some ways, more like the actual Madam Web from the comics, who is constantly sitting in a chair, just kind of plugged into things. But it's a good movie. Lots of echoes, wheels within wheels.
Her character does make me think that's what Shows from Girls would have ended up becoming, just a very put upon, bullied around
I could
girl
see
who's
that.
I know I'm carrying out evil, but I all I can do is just do the best job I can and get a little annoyed that he won't let me do the evil he wants me to do in a better way.
Yeah.
She's like, I never should have left Japan. I should have stayed in Japan.
Yeah. So so Cassie goes to Grand Central Station. Weirdly enough, all three of the young women that are featured in the visions also are at Grand Central Station at the same time. Security camera picks them up.
We can only take this as an implicit approval of the attempts to make Grand Central Station into not just a transit hub, but also a meeting place, a retail center, a restaurant center. Clearly, urban revitalization has worked, according to Madam Webb in this one instance.
That's a barely subtext.
They all went to the
thank you, Bloomberg. Thank
they
you,
all
Giuliani.
They all stopped by the Tycoon store to buy some ties because that is there still, I think, after many years.
You don't have to go there
I'm thinking
just
of
to
Penn
travel.
Station. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Penn Station, I think.
You don't have to go there just to travel. You can also go there to meet your destiny. It's a fun place.
Exactly.
And have some
that's
oysters.
actually that's a good line. So Ezekiel Sims costumes up and he heads to Grand Central Station to kill some girls. Okay. So Cassie gets on a train. She keeps having visions of the various three girls getting on the train and then getting murdered by a spider-suited Ezekiel Sims.
And also some of the keeps having visions of other people sitting on the train, what they're going to say, and a guy asking her if it's the right train. And when he goes down, she goes, I hope not. And then he leaves. And I'm like, oh, this is the repercussion of your powers. That guy ended up on the wrong train, Cassie.
Later on,
that is one of my favorite line readings is later on she runs into the same guy on a different train and he goes, am I on the right train? And she goes, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That was good.
She's
That was very good.
bored and frustrated. Like, I got bigger things
And he's
going on.
like, I only asked her if it was the right train twice. Now, if I had asked her 3 times, if she had heard me say it 3 times, like if she had precogged me saying it, I could understand why she'd be so upset. But I only asked her twice. This is, again, I'm mad at her. Again, I wouldn't be mad at her if she had precognitive abilities. But again, we know that's impossible.
Important disclaimer. Yeah.
That was the funniest joke in the whole movie to me. Like the liver one. The fact that like, if this guy like asked this girl if he was on the right train, she was like, no. He goes, then sees her on that train. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that would be confusing to me. This guy's the most relatable guy in the movie.
Yeah.
So she manages to convince these 3 girls to follow her because there's a Spider-Man chasing them. They eventually lose him. He ends up killing a whole bunch of cops, but in the process, she gets blamed for the attack on the cops and for kidnapping the girls. She steals a cab.
I could never quite understand why she was the one who ended up getting the full blame. Since did this because if the spider killed, I guess was it like she was reported in and then Ezekiel killed everybody, so there were no witnesses.
Yeah, because
it was.
Yeah, Sydney Sweeney one time sort of like half-heartedly is like, I think this lady might be trying to kidnap us. And I feel like the cops that heard that died. So I'm not really sure why.
And there are cameras, as the movie is posited, there are cameras everywhere. So there should be footage of a man in a dark suit murdering police officers as these women all run away.
From what we were able to...
You're forgetting there's a super hacker monitoring the feeds who can probably manipulate them.
She probably used AI, which he has because he's still in the future and he programmed it. Used AI to create a video that showed Cassie killing cops and then stealing the girls, I guess, and inserted that in.
This is the problem with the movie where a scene will happen and the next scene will have to explain what the takeaway from the previous scene was.
Yeah.
Because they know like it doesn't quite make sense. So look, all you got to know is like I'm now thought of to be the one who's kidnapping you guys.
Yeah.
Like,
and I made it worse by stealing a car too. That's a genuine crime.
She steals a cab. Now, don't worry. This is before they had tracking devices in cabs, so they could easily track it.
Also, for some reason, the cab driver is being paid by his fare while standing outside the cab, which I've never seen ever. Did he help her with luggage? Maybe I've never seen that before. So the fact that she can get in and drive away.
People get out of a car to give her the opportunity to get in and steal the car. Who never would get out of the car.
I mean, that's a valuable life lesson this guy just learned, that one's on
Don't
him.
get out of your car. Don't leave it running, certainly,
So we get to meet the girls, Julia, Maddie, and Anya. They're, I don't know. There's
the movie
not a lot going on
makes the most half-hearted attempts to, distinguish these girls from one another. There are, small things I can see that they're
describe them. Give me some broad strokes, Dan.
Yeah, Dan, tell me about Sydney. Tell me about Julia.
She's
an adult in little kid drag.
She's kind of Sydney Sweeney. They tried to make into sort of this geeky schoolgirl, which does not suit her talents
I think it's
well.
very funny that they're like, she is just sex on toast. How do we make her seem less sexy? We'll put her in a schoolgirl outfit. That's what we'll do. There's no
Except
sexual
for in this
implications
movie,
of that.
It definitely works. But that's everyone seems so disaffected. Like there are just 3 disaffected teens.
So there's Julia, who's a nerd. There's Anya, who it turns out later, her father was deported, right?
She's undocumented.
She's undocumented. Is her entire character trait. That is,
and she lives in the same building as Cassie, but they didn't know each other for now. And
she's kind of the quiet smart ass, and the other one is the louder smart ass.
Well, you know that she's also smart because she has a shirt that says like science rules or something like that, or math rocks. I love nerds or something. Yes. And Maddie is the rich girl who skateboards around and likes to pretend she's not rich because her parents are always away in China doing business stuff.
Yep.
She also likes to eat. Is the big thing about her character.
Food all
She's
the time.
Always talking about eating.
Teenagers, guys.
Yeah, they're hungry.
Even when they're late 20s actresses, they're still hungry all the time.
and also they except for they all seem to be semi-allergic to clothes that cover their belly buttons because all their shirts except for Sydney Sweeney's don't cover their midriffs. And
check out old man yelling at clouds over here. Doesn't understand the
I'm just saying,
of the teens.
if I wanted to see that many belly buttons, I'd watch Belly. Are there a lot of belly buttons in
the
Belly?
Movie Belly?
Yeah.
With DMX?
Belly buttons.
All right.
Do you get to see DMX's belly button? I assume at some point, right?
Elliot is so like he doesn't understand. He got the album by the band Belly. He's like, I thought these were all going to all belly buttons.
There's songs about bellies and belly buttons. Yeah, I don't
feed
get
the
it.
Tree. Why are you feeding the tree? Feed me a belly button.
I mean, Pinocchio's the one kid who doesn't have a belly button. He's
exactly.
no umbilical cord.
In, just
I guess.
Okay,
do you think Geppetto just took like a little awl or something and just kind of like dug a belly button out?
To make he didn't want Pinocchio to feel out of place.
I don't want you to feel weird in a gym class when you're changing, so I'll give you a belly button and a penis. Let's not go too far, Pinocchio. Come on.
That's great. So
thank you.
So we get to meet the girls. Dakota Johnson does not want to hang out with them, but she kind of has to because she's implicated in their kidnapping. So they go
and she wants to protect them.
They go hide out in the woods. She leaves them there with the instructions, don't do dumb things. She then sneaks home, removes the plates from the cab. She sneaks home, reads the spider journal again, finally finds the photo of her mother with Ezekiel Sims.
Yeah.
She then tests her powers to try and see if she has spider powers. She can climb on walls. She cannot.
I like that moment.
Yeah.
She decides to jump and try to stick to walls, and she falls down. She tells her cat, don't tell anybody, basically. Like, that never happened.
The girls do dumb things. They go. They
do dumb things.
They walk to a
Stuart,
diner.
You have no idea that the words you just said when you put together sound
so
like poop.
Right now.
You have no idea what shit you just stepped in. Literally, metaphorically.
When the podcast comes out, I'll be embarrassed.
You'll listen to it and you'll be like, can't believe I said do dumb things. Oh man. Oh. Listeners, I want you to draw a picture of Stuart being embarrassed listening to the podcast later and send it to the podcast. Stink lines and embarrassment lines together. Yeah,
and I'm trying so hard to look cool in front of my friend Zhubin, but I just look like such an idiot.
No, man, the sunglasses did it for me.
Thank you. Well, I just want to be kind of the Madam Web of this podcast.
Yeah, I presume that this was some Madam Web cosplays, some very low-key cosplays.
Exactly. I thought we were all going to be in the spirit wearing cool shades, but I guess I'm the only one. So the girls do dumb things. They go to a diner.
He said it again. Can you believe this? And on the Max Fun Drive episode, on that of all cases.
I know.
Okay, everybody. Remember at the top of the show when I told you that I'd tell you more about Max Fun Drive? Well, now I'm telling you what I told you I'd tell you is finally being told. To you! The 12 days of Maximum Fun Drive is the most wonderful time of year when we celebrate the birth of our Savior, Maxwell Fun, by inviting you to support our show. Dan, read the liturgy. It's all in there. It's all in there. By inviting you to support our show by going to MaximumFun.org/join and becoming a new member of the Maximum Fun Network, or by boosting or upgrading your membership. Why do we need members? Okay, let's get down to this. Because your membership pledges are what pays for the shows you love. Our show and the other Max Fun shows are directly supported by our members. This is where the vast majority of the show's proceeds come from. And for Daniel McCoy and myself, it's now where most of our personal income comes from. When you pledge your money, it isn't going to some shadowy bureaucracy where nobody knows how it's spent. Your money isn't going to some faceless corporation that will funnel that money into buying Supreme Court justices. No, it's going directly to the creators of the shows you choose, which means Stuart, Dan, and me, so that we can buy things like food, not Supreme Court justices. I would not buy one. I would not want to eat one. They probably don't taste good.
Ellie can feed his wife and kids. I can feed my wife and cats. It's
Yeah.
I can buy protein powder, fancy sunglasses, hair care products, miniatures.
maybe that's not helping.
Trips
as
to
much,
Australia.
Stuart.
I think that is helping quite a bit,
I don't
actually.
think it is.
I think people would be happy to spend money so that Stuart can keep looking as good as he does. Look,
Thank
being
you.
supported by our members means this show can remain independent. Nobody controls what we say or tells us what to do. And trust me, as I slog through life, trying desperately to get permission to work in some way telling jokes or crafting stories, permission from television executives who themselves do not know how to tell jokes or craft stories, it is increasingly valuable to me that your support keeps this show free and easy, summer breezy. Thanks to you, just like the Addams Family, we can do what we want to do, say what we want to say, live how we want to live, and play how we want to play. We will not stop and smack a friend. What do they do? Slap a friend?
Kick and they slap a friend, yeah.
We won't kick
about-
or slap friends.
What's our policy? Re-dancing. Can we dance how we
Sometimes.
want to dance?
We can
Oh,
dance how
okay.
we want to dance, sure.
Okay, sure.
Think about all the TV shows that you love that got canceled because some suit decided it wasn't pushing stock growth enough. Think of the fact that there's an entire Wile E. Coyote movie you will never see because some suit decided they just weren't going to let you. When you directly support the things you love, like this podcast, you keep that from happening. You keep that from happening to us, from ever being put in the situation where someone else can decide whether you're going to hear us or not. So by going to MaximumFun.org/join and supporting our show, you are sending a message to the sludge factory that is modern media that the art you love is valued and will survive. So that's all to say. Will you please go to MaximumFun.org/join right now and become a member of Maximum Fun? Will you help us for as little as $5 a month to keep independent, goofy nonsense like the Flophouse alive? If you can afford more than $5 per month, please consider pledging $10 a month. If you can afford more than that, well, look, I'm not going to tell you to give us less money than you want to give us. Give us as much as you want. Feel free to upgrade your membership to a higher level or boost your membership by a few extra dollars. But if $5 is all you can swing, then that is wonderful, incredibly appreciated by us. We'd be very thankful if you would go to MaximumFun.org/join and support as a member right now. Right, Dan? Dan, thank the nice people. Show that we're thankful.
Thank you all. Thank you. I mean, like, you know what? I don't want to get off message. I would like to send people to pledge money so we can continue the show. But also, if this is just not your year, that's also fine. Thank you for listening. Tell someone about the show. We appreciate you.
Thank you. That's enough thanking by telling people not to pledge. Dan, but I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm being a harder ass than Dan. I'm asking you right now,
Thank you.
as you're listening to this, to go to MaximumFun.org/join. You don't have to even pause the podcast. Keep listening while you do it, because I'm going to tell you, once you're at MaximumFun.org/join, you're going to choose what level of support you feel you can afford in exchange for the podcast you love. You'll click Start a Membership. You'll put in your credit card information. I'm sorry, we no longer accept farm goods as barter. We did for a short amount of time, but I don't need that many eggs. You'll choose what podcast you want
I
to
do.
Yeah, Stuart needs a lot of eggs. He needs that protein.
Stuart's a regular cool hand Luke.
You'll choose what podcast you want to contribute to, and that's it. It's that easy. If you're already a member, it's even easier to upgrade your pledge level, or if you feel like you can't afford the full upgrade, but you still want to give us a little more, you can afford a little more, then boost it by adding a few extra bucks. This is especially great if you want to add a show to the ones you already support. A show like, say, The Flophouse, maybe? So once again, if you love The Flophouse, and I know I do, and you're not already a member, which I am, then would you please go to MaximumFun.org/join and support us for as little as $5 a month. That's one less coffee a month. Help save us and help save yourself from an ulcer all at the same time. If you're already a member and you're feeling flush with cash this year, would you please go to MaximumFun.org/join and upgrade or boost your membership? I'll be back with more Drive Talk later in the episode. That's enough for now. For now, let's get back to the hijinks. Boys, spin that web.
Yeah, so they decide to go to a diner, which at first seems like it's a long way away, but we later learn is very close to their campsite.
It's that steps. So if you were selling an apartment in the woods, you would say steps away from dining. Yeah,
It steps away, but then later on, when Dakota Johnson is trying to drive there, it takes her forever.
She's not taking the direct route.
Yeah.
It also, I'm not sure when they go there, it's like daytime, but when they get there, it seems to be like
It's
10 p.m.
wild.
Like it seems like very.
Yeah. And it seems like it's going to be set up that it's going to be a real culture clash when they go to this diner, but it's not.
Yeah, record scratch.
And there's a bunch of like young handsome dudes that show up. It seems like this is the exact right diner for them to walk into. And which one's it? Maddie just starts ordering food, and she has so many plates of food around her, and she says to the waitress, "Keep it coming." And it's like, how much did you order? It's like you have to order.
I had very nonspecific.
I had to stop the movie. That was such a upsetting line to me. It is the woman, the server brings out 15 full plates.
Yeah.
And
It's like,
says, keep
like an
coming.
omakase.
But keep what coming? The French fries, the pancakes? Like what is the server supposed to do with that?
And she's not eating it fast. She's not like Jughead, just
like
gobbling
she's
it
like,
up.
Keep it coming. One fry
at a time.
Two fry.
Maybe this is a diner that advertises unlimited pancakes, and she's trying to get up on the wall.
That would make sense.
The wall of pancake heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then they, of course, make a scene. They start dancing on a table. A trucker sees them.
Too toxic.
Yeah. Okay, Elliot is a little embarrassed that he didn't know the Britney Spears song from the Cat Person episode.
Yes,
so
I
he's
want to
really
show that I know this one.
Fucking flashing this shit around.
Yeah.
Well, but this because
this is probably Britney Spears' best song. We can agree on that, right, guys?
Toxic?
Yeah,
it would have to be.
Yeah.
It would have to. It's certainly the most Henry Mancini Britney Spears song. But when
that's how I judge all my pop music.
The thing that I do like about the way they use the song is it's diegetic music. It's coming. They're dancing to it. It's in the building, but then it becomes the music for a fight scene soundtrack. And I was just like, they are using every part of Toxic. Like they're not just letting it go. They're really and also this spider bite. It's toxic.
Yeah, and it reminds me how great that fan edit of the fight scene from the second Star Wars movie that was set to Toxic, the like throne room fight scene with Snoke and all that shit, where they like swapped in Toxic for whatever music was there, and you're like, wow, this really works. This is great.
Works. This is a song with a lot of energy. Yeah. And they're dancing for a while on this table.
In a diner too. I'm surprised no one tells them to get down because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but outside of Coyote Ugly, that's not typically a thing that's done.
No, certainly. I grew up in the land of diners, New Jersey, and if you got up on the table and started dancing, they would yell at you to get off the table. I'm sure they would not, and they wouldn't do it nicely. This is New Jersey. People swear it went to babies.
You're actually, when you say the vibe of the diner, it sort of had every diner vibe. It had like the dancing on table. They also had like the truckers reading the New York Post while they were drinking coffee vibe. It had every vibe was in that diner.
There's a lot of neon and chrome.
Howard the Duck in the corner.
Well, it made me. It was a throwback to the era, like you're saying, Stuart, of Howard the Duck, when every genre movie had a scene in a diner because it was like, can you believe these far out characters in a diner? That's the least far out place. And
they're talking to fucking Dexter Jetster or whatever his name is.
yeah, exactly. But at a certain point it became, I guess they all hang out at diners. I guess anytime an alien shows up or a monster, they go to a diner at some point.
Superman's going to come in and kick the ass of someone who earlier in the movie was mean to him when he was Clark Kent and had no powers.
He's
pretty petty about Superman.
But admit it, you'd do it too, Dan. You'd do that too if you were Superman.
Yeah, but once you're Superman, you should know. You should the knowledge should be enough.
And you do it just
you don't think you need to flex on him?
You just get a gun too.
I could just get a gun.
So a trucker sees...
every gun makes any man a Superman.
Yeah.
This episode brought to you by the NRA, making the world worse for many, many years.
So a trucker sees the girls. He calls in a tip. Of course, that tip is then intercepted by Zasha Mamet, who passes it along to Ezekiel Sims, who calls off the police because he's going to handle it his style. Cassie gets to...
Let me get into my costume first.
Cassie finds that the girls have abandoned the campsite. She gets in her car to drive to the diner. We see visions. We don't realize they're visions, but we see visions of Ezekiel Sims showing up at the diner and killing the girls. Once again, set to Toxic. And then, but it turns out those are visions. And then he is at the diner, and before he can do anything, Cassie crashes through the front of the diner in the cab and smashes him into a wall.
One of two times she will drive a vehicle through something to surprise him. It's like, it shouldn't work twice. I'm sorry, Ezekiel. You can see the future and you have
one's
a memory.
on him,
Yeah.
I'm not even sure of the mechanics of the second one, but we'll get to it.
I will say the second one is very
also
surprising.
Yeah. Even this one, this diner seems to be made out of like balsa wood. Diners are a heavy construction restaurant. They're made out of chrome and metal, but this car just takes it out easy. Yeah.
In the process, Cassie gets poisoned a little bit, just a little bit, as a treat. And they escape. This is, of course, shortly after here. This is where Sims is talking to his hacker, and they're like, "Who is this strange woman who keeps showing up?" And they're like, "That's Cassandra Webb." And that's, of course, where insert audience laughter there.
Oh, and he goes, kind of ironic, huh? Her name's Webb, and this whole thing's about spiders. Was there a connection, you think? Anyway.
So they hide out at a motel. Cassie
Who gave her the name Cassandra? The spider people?
I assume
Probably.
Spider-Man, yeah.
Or maybe one of her foster
Or maybe her mom in her
all,
dying breath, with her dying breath,
they're all
said
classics
Cassandra.
fans. They know that she'll have the gift of sight, so they're like...
So they have to call her Cassandra, yeah.
I think it's really funny that she's Cassie, mostly because Sydney Sweeney seems to have a lot of trouble with the name Cassie. She does not say it normal. She's always like, Cassie.
And that's the reason why is because that's her character on Euphoria.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
Man.
And there's a character named Maddie in Euphoria, and there's a character named Maddie in this. So confusing.
About this.
Must have been tough.
Euphoria? No. Me-phoria. Anyway, continue.
Man, Elliot's going to jail for that joke.
Yep. Worth it, but I understand the charge. It's a fair cop, yeah.
So Cassie leaves the girls to sleep. She goes back to the diner, and she has this like vision conversation with Ezekiel Sims, who explains his entire plan to her.
Yes, this is real Rey and Kylo stuff from Star Wars. Now they can use Spider Force to talk to each other. And he's like, look, I knew your mom. We were close. I did kill her, but I shouldn't have any secrets from you. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
this is the movie running out of reasons to explain plot. It's just like, how about they just tell it to each other?
It is almost like Ezekiel is like, look, it's that time in the movie when you need to know what's going on. So let me just tell you.
We got to bring
sit down and have a chat.
Here.
Let's pull out some spider tea.
So she goes back and teaches the girls CPR. That's going to come in handy later. She leaves the girls with her friend Ben. And the girls all explain, they're like, yeah, we can't go home because of these reasons. They're like, okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's just get this over with. She leaves them with Ben so that she can go to Peru. She uses her notes.
This is the quickest trip to Peru anyone has ever taken.
Nip down
30
Peru
minutes later, she's in Peru.
It does make it seem like it takes her a day to go to Peru, get to the jungle, explore around, and then come back. It's crazy.
Yeah. She uses her mom's notes and maps to find the leader of Las Arañas.
Who's just hanging out. Like
just hanging out.
He was really committed. He's like, he told her mom, when it's time and she comes back, I'll have answers for her. And he's just there wearing like a jaunty neckerchief, being like, hey, I've been waiting for you.
I love the idea. It's like, when she's ready, we'll be here. We will not be proactive about this. We will not go to her and tell her anything. She's got to want it. She's got to come here. So I will not MySpace friend her. That will not happen.
That's actually, wow, Elliot's topical. Yeah, he's good.
Early 2000s.
Yeah, you're a professional writer. So the leader of Las Arañas.
Hey, Stuart, I was there. I lived it, man.
Tom was my friend.
So she has a vision quest where she sees her mother and she like sees what happened, but also she had been laboring this entire time under the belief that her mother, very pregnant, had decided to just go down to the Amazon for some reason because she hated her baby so much. But it turns out the reason why is because she knew her baby was going to be born with a very specific, degenerative disease?
It was a neuromuscular disorder. And she says the line like, but I don't have a neuromuscular disorder.
Just so that for the case the dummies in the audience didn't put two and two together,
And her mother went down there because she believes that this spider bite is the only cure and that Western medicine wouldn't recognize magical spiders.
So by going to Peru, she was not running from her unborn daughter, which you cannot do because she was in her belly. She was starring DMX. She would go anywhere that her mother goes, but she did it entirely to save her. Her mother did love her. She didn't abandon her by dying.
What a revelation.
Yeah,
it's really also a terrible thing about the movie where we discover at that moment that has been her deep burden. Yeah. And in a second later, it's resolved. Yeah. Like the movie comes up with these deep emotional issues, and then it's like, and that's that. And now we've resolved it.
Yeah, you could have saved your friend. He's dead. Don't worry about it anymore.
To be fair, this does feel like the kind of movie that they were at some points making up as they went along on set. So, it's possible that they were like, we should put this in here.
It was also another thing too about the Arañas people that they are the man who is like who puts on this vision quest.
Santiago.
Santiago, is that his name?
Yeah, according to Wikipedia, that's his name. Yeah.
He is coded as this, indigenous, wise native man who, with his, communal, mystical touch, will bring her to some kind of larger peace. And it's never explained. These people are just spider people. A spider bit them and they run around. It feels so racist to me and be like, and also obviously they are wise beyond their years because they live in the jungle and can teach her. At one point he tells her, like, you have to see the future clearly. Before you can see the future clearly, you must heal the wounds of the past. It's like, what the hell is this guy doing saying that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
This guy, this attempt to find like a wise man among these people,
like a Yoda
very,
figure,
very racist to me in the sense of like, and of course the Amazonians will be the spiritual minded people.
Zhubin, you have to understand that people of color are just naturally closer to the mystic and supernatural world, according to movies. It's like there's a character in so many ghost movies where it's like, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll talk to the black or Haitian woman that is nearest to me, and they'll be like, all right, it's ghosts. Let me explain it to you. If that's racist, then I guess it is. Yeah.
A little confused by, like, he's hanging out like dressed kind of like, I don't know, Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief here, like, so.
He actually, that's a good call. He is dressing like Cary with the neckerchief and everything, yeah.
So, like, this is his, like, secret identity when he's not a spider person, but then, like, he goes into the jungle to, like, do stuff?
I assume he lives in the jungle. When the tourists come around, he puts on the spider guy suit and crawls around on trees. When the tourists are not around, it's the same way that I remember my dad years ago, he took a rafting trip through Costa Rica, and the thing that struck him the most was that everybody, everywhere they went, was listening to Meatloaf's Bad Outta Hell album. And he was like, it just wasn't what I expected from going into the jungle. And I'm like, yeah, well, they like music too, I guess.
It's a big, it's a big album.
It's a huge album. Why wouldn't they be listening to it? But I think this is just, he was like, Cassie, she's like family. I don't need to dress up in all this stuff. Like, I'm not gonna sell her any trinkets or anything like that.
I'm not gonna.
So Cassie has her her live, laugh, love moment. She heads back to New York. Meanwhile,
what would that be in spider terms? It's like spin, stalk.
Inject with poison. I don't know.
Swallow a fly.
Just gobbling down dozens of flies.
Yeah, spin, stalk, suck, because they suck the innards out of their victims. Yeah.
Yum.
So meanwhile, Ben's all the girls are living.
And she brings it home painted in 3 different fonts on a piece of driftwood that she puts in her apartment.
Yeah, I mean, you got to buy some art when you're on vacation.
Yeah, of course.
You should see all the shit Dan brought back from the Joko cruise. It's crazy.
Indigenous Joko art.
So, meanwhile, the girls are living with Ben and Ben's sister, and I guess Ben's sister, Emma Roberts, whose water breaks. They all got to go to the hospital.
One of the girls says gross or ew or something, which I thought was funny.
They all load up into a car and they drive over. Unfortunately, on the drive, they get clocked by a security camera, so Ezekiel Sims knows where they're at.
Now, that raises a good question. Why are they bringing the girls with them to the hospital? These are teenagers. They could just leave them at home watching TV and it would be fine.
Absolutely.
Parties.
Because they have to advance the plot in that direction? Absolutely. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Parties. I think they're worried about parties.
Yeah, they're worried about parties. They're like, we don't want a risky business situation breaking out here.
Yep, or weird science.
We leave to take her to the hospital. Next thing you know, you're creating people with the computer, and there's barbarian bikers.
Vernon Wells shows up. Yep.
Yeah, they don't need that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be so when they come back in 2 days and just like that Project X party has happened. They're like, you don't even know any teenagers in town. How did this happen?
So they get spotted by Sims, who uses traffic light manipulation techniques to cause a traffic jam, and he has them cornered. Cassie shows up. She goes over to Ben's house, sees a puddle of water on the ground, and has a vision and knows exactly what's going on. So she steals an ambulance, and she drives it through a building and then smashes into Ezekiel Sims.
I was unclear as to the mechanics of this. Yeah, like she smashes her ambulance out in exactly the right place, and it looks like she just goes through like a billboard.
Yeah, she goes through a billboard in Times Square, I think.
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
How did she get up that?
What road is she on there?
So I'm assuming that this is like those buildings in cities in I think in parts of China where the levels are all over the place, and you can go in on. There's videos of this where you go in on the ground floor of a building, and you go up a flight of stairs, and suddenly you're on the 30th floor of the building on the other side, and you go down, and then suddenly you're on the the 100th floor of another building, and then suddenly you're on the ground floor again. I
wow,
that's
MC Escher, huh?
As a former inhabitant of New York, you're aware that this is not true.
No, that's true. My experience in New York tells me that that's not the case. That there's a ground level and all the buildings just pop out of it. You know,
the Chinatown area of New York has these Chinese style levels, so that's why.
Where they've changed the geography of the island just for that part. Now maybe it's. I mean, maybe that it was a. Maybe I'm giving them maybe it's a parking garage structure, and she's able to go up a ramp and then come out. But we don't see any of that, I don't think. Yeah. She's just driving in one place and then suddenly is driving out of a building through a billboard, which also implies that behind every billboard is just an open road space that you can go through.
Yeah. It's in case there's like a visiting basketball team that has to burst through it.
Yeah.
Or the Roadrunners around.
Thank you, Dan.
Or the Roadrunners on a visiting basketball team, as he was in 2 different movies.
That's true. So
Space Jam and Hoosiers.
Thanks for listing them. Do you got any more movies that the Roadrunner was in?
Where he plays basketball? Blue Chips.
Okay.
Right? And
go on.
And what was the other
you're
one?
Doing great.
What's the other Roadrunner basketball movie that he's in? He's taking up space, and basketball is kind of his jam, you know. But he was in Space Jam. So I think there's another one also that the Roadrunner plays basketball in. And
okay, thank you for taking us down this road.
He Got Game. He Got Game. That's what Spike Lee's He Got Game. That's the one. Yeah.
So they
and Hoop Dreams. I forgot Hoop Dreams was also about the Roadrunner.
Man,
that was a real life documentary. Yeah.
Man, I got a real Roadrunner on my tail. So they escape in an ambulance. They make it to a fireworks factory where they immediately start setting a bunch of fires.
The fireworks factory from earlier that they had. So that's why she knows about it, right?
That makes sense then.
I have a big problem with this climax. I mean, for a number of reasons, but here's one problem. Cassie takes them there because she has had this vision. She's like, I know what I need to do to make this work. And then it doesn't happen. So otherwise you would never go to a fireworks factory and then set the fireworks factory on fire as they do as like a strategy.
Wouldn't. Yeah.
But she's doing it because she knows it's going to all work out, but it doesn't work the way she wants it to. So
legally, we are telling you not to set a fireworks factory on fire.
Life is what happens while you're making plans. You know, that's all I can say to Cassie.
I guess so. Well, also, there's another unexpected.
If the spider guy, they cut the spider, he goes, I wonder if I should tell her that every 20th vision is false just to test her. She'll figure it out.
Well, that would certainly explain something else that's coming up. But anyway, we'll get to it.
Yeah. She knows she needs to involve that Pepsi-Cola sign. She needs to involve that, you know.
Yes. Powers are sponsored by Pepsi. So
again, contractually they have to.
I mean, if this movie was made in the 80s, she would get stronger by drinking Pepsi. Like every time she needed to power up, she would crack open a can of Pepsi and just chug it down. Yeah. Popeye style.
Dan's looking at my notes. He's like, dear God, I hope this is almost done. So Sims follows them to the fireworks factory. Things start exploding everywhere. A firework rocket flies into a brick wall and blows a giant hole through it.
What kind of firework?
Fuck?
Again, so badly edited. Nothing is making sense.
So they climb up to the roof. They're able to avoid. They're able to navigate all the explosions using Cassie's gift of foresight. At one point, Sims has climbed up on the roof with them, and a rocket goes flying right at him, and he bats it out of the way where it flies over and hits a nearby helicopter, blowing it up.
Again, these fireworks are astoundingly powerful.
They're all surface-to-air missiles,
Let alone the fact that you should not have a fireworks warehouse in the middle of a heavily residential area as they do in this movie. But the fact that these fireworks are in a city and they're these are rockets. These are incredibly powerful. You know,
these are on their way to the Ukrainian front. These are not fireworks.
I should have told her that the fireworks factory is now munitions waypoint.
Yeah. There's there's some fighting. At one point, all 3 of the girls are hanging off of things for their life, and Sims is like, Madam Webb, you can't save all 3. And then she goes into a weird trance, and then ghost versions of herself connected by weird umbilical cords start to save all the girls, and then that stops almost immediately. But that was pretty cool. I'm like, whoa, wow.
Because Santiago says, once you know the future and understand the web, one of your powers is that you'll be able to be in more than one place at the same time, which seems metaphorical. She's going to know what's going on. But no, it means she can actually project herself to different places. Yeah, just as long as the ghost umbilical cords connect her, this is something that it's one of those things where it's like, this power is a little too useful. Like, if there was a sequel, they're gonna have to dial this back. Luckily, there will never be a sequel, so they don't have to do that.
Oh man,
no, that's too bad.
It's too bad because the last 20 minutes are setting up that sequel.
Yeah,
Very unfortunate.
Sims falls and gets smushed and dies. Dakota Johnson falls in the water and then gets hit in the eyes with a rocket.
On.
Go on.
Let us not get over. Like, there's an exchange where like she's like, turns out it was always me that was gonna kill you. Like his like it was not these three girls.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck, movie? Like, you could like maybe you could pull this do this rug pull if you offer some clever reason. But we've been set up the whole time like this is a prophecy. This is how he's gonna die. Like, do a little bit more than just like psych.
Well,
like,
because Dan, here's I think what they were planning was I think she's going to turn out to be wrong, and there would be a future movie where Ezekiel comes back and we do see him fight the now costumed. Could be. But the way it happens in the movie, and again because there will be no sequel to this, it does seem like that she's like maybe she's like. She should have said like, dreams aren't prophecies, dumbass. And then she could have killed him. Like that might have done it. But also the fact that she's like had a vision of that big S from the Pepsi sign falling on him. So she keeps angling him towards the S. And it's like, well, superhero shouldn't be trying to kill somebody. Like, I understand setting a trap to catch him or whatever, or knock him out. But the idea that she's like,
that's what spiders do.
I got to do this right or he won't die. And I've got to kill this guy. It's
also, she's so cartoonishly looking at the S while she's backing him up into the S that I feel like he should be able to be
the
like
deadliest letter.
And then she's like, wait, okay, a little bit. No, not that far.
To the left,
starts making a beeping sound.
Yeah.
So he does get smushed. Brought to you by Pepsi. She falls into the water. A stray rocket flies underwater and explodes in her face, blinding her. She's saved by the girls.
They use the CPR that she taught them earlier.
Yeah, we're in the home stretch here.
They apparently break her back,
Peter Parker is born. She is in a hospital room, and the girls are led into the room, and she's like, "They can come in and see me. They're all mine. They're my family." And you're like, what? That's a weird turn. We get a little bit of a flash forward. This is my stand-up and cheer moment.
Yeah.
Because we see her in this like mechanized wheelchair for some reason, wearing cool-ass sunglasses.
These sunglasses.
And she's making this little smile like the world's youngest grandma. And it's so funny.
Oh,
and
my
like
gosh.
we're talking about an actress who is like at least 75% eye acting. And they're like, let's put on some blue blockers so we don't see those eyes.
This really feels like, I mean, I don't know what happened. Like, this feels like reshoot number 12, and she is just so tired of it all to me. And she's doing this version of herself where like, okay, now that she's in full Madam Web powers, even though, you know, she's been blinded and she's in this chair, like she is totally at peace, and she's like so blissed out. But it's
she
like
knows her role.
The most sort of bored, blissed out you can see. And these sunglasses, I swear to God, it's like they sent someone to the store and be like, pick the ones that will look the silliest.
Well, they do this stutter step, right? Like there's like, you see her in the wheelchair before you see her again with, are those the same sunglasses or were those sillier sunglasses the second time? Like but it does feel like these do feel like reshoot scenes. My guess is that, because I kept hearing about, when this movie was in production, I kept hearing, this isn't going to be a superhero-y movie. This is going to be more of a suspense thriller. This is going to be more of almost a 90s style suspense thriller. And my guess is that they were like, they had maybe a cut of it even, and they were like, is she not going to ever look like the fucking character from the comics? Because we need that to happen. And so they had this first ending, and they're like, is that good? She has these big sunglasses, and she's in a wheelchair. And they're like, no, put her in like a red leather jacket. What are you doing? You know? So, Stuart, what happens? They're arguing about the takeout food that they're going to eat, right? The girls come in.
Yeah. Why don't you, instead of queuing me up, why don't you answer your own prompt, Elliot?
I'm trying to, so they're, because I'm not entirely sure. So this scene is not a prophecy here, right? Or is it? Like,
so
it's like,
the girls show up, they have Chinese food. They're like, we got you this thing. And she's like, of course, you knew that it was my favorite or some shit. It's like all these dumbass lines about like Maddie, she can see the future.
Yeah, and Maddie can't stop eating. You know, she's
girl
like,
loves to eat.
She's like, Gesundheit. Onion goes, huh? Achoo. Oh, thanks. Like,
yeah, it's so great.
It's like the sitcom version of the Madam Web movie. And then she flashes forward again to seeing them all in costume and her in her costume. And does she have like a spider on her fingers? I'm trying to remember exactly how it is. But it's like suddenly it becomes the like this movie was like, all right, this is kind of like a realistic suspense thriller with superhero elements. And then in the last couple minutes, they're like, fuck it, let's just go crazy. Come on, let's just. They're all in crazy costumes. They're all there. It looks like the direct-to-video Madame Web movie that would have come out in 1998. Like, let's just do this. You know?
Yeah, it's a very silly little ending that I think adds a fun punch to what was a very silly movie. Thumbs up from Stuart.
I took it so deeply insultingly that this movie said, now that you've seen 98 minutes of this, the next movie we make will have all the superhero costumes and fight scenes that we kept continuously teasing and promising throughout this movie and never once delivered. Not until I've never seen a superhero spend the entire movie figuring out how to use their powers. Usually the scene where they're like, oh, I get it, I can use them, is like in the first 30 minutes, and then it's like a whole hour and a half of fun spiderweb slinging and bullet blocking. This one just slowly gets longer premonitions. And not at the end of the movie does anything actually happen regarding superpowers. And then to be at the end of it, okay, next movie. Come back, we got you.
It feels a little bit like
we've laid the foundation, the very necessary foundation that these characters would not have worked without. Now that we've laid it, get ready, because Madame Web 2, the Spider Girls, is going to blow your mind with all the costumes, the characters, the powers.
Yeah, it feels like an hour, like a feature length Kickstarter like demo reel where they're like, hey, if you back this project, you'll actually get these costumes maybe.
It would be so funny if they made the sequel and the first sequel is like, okay, hold on, let's 1993, all right? Let's just resituate.
This is all about Cassie as a kid.
2 hour
and all the girls are babies. Okay.
Okay,
and then then they do a third movie, and the first couple minutes, they're all posing in the costumes, and they're like, you know what? It'd be a lot easier if we didn't wear these costumes. We weren't restricted by all this rubber or whatever. We'll just wear regular clothes.
Yeah, let's cap off.
Also, I got to finish grad school. I'm the nerd girl, remember? So it's 2 hours of that.
Cap off our Madame Web discussion.
None of us really had like a traumatic experience that forced us to have a reason to stop crime. Like, so why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing this?
Just hanging out.
Our traumatic experience was watching our friend trick a guy into getting smushed.
Cap off our discussion in the traditional way, which is, of course, final judgments, whether this is a good, bad movie, a bad, bad movie, or a movie kind of like. I'm going to say, for me, it was a good, bad movie. It harkened back to the original Marvel film, Howard the Duck, in the sense that, like, the things that I enjoyed about it are inextricable from the things that are janky and weird about it. Like, there's some stuff in here that, like, I really actually had fun with, kind of Dakota Johnson's attitude, like the weird sort of hangout vibe of some of it. And I sort of enjoyed the feeling, like we've talked about it before, now that superhero movies are the only thing that gets made, at least, although less now, at least you can see something that's a little different. Like this harkens back to like an earlier day when people are like, I don't know what a superhero movie is. Do you? Maybe it can be this. So there's that strangeness, but I also laughed a lot at stuff that was just not working. That was my feeling. Elliot, what about you?
I also would call this a good, bad movie. I feel like we haven't quite gotten across the good, bad tone of it, which this does feel like a throwback movie, not necessarily in the way they intended, I think, but it feels like this is a 90s superhero movie. They don't know what superheroes are popular. They don't know what people like about superheroes. They don't know what makes them fun for fans. So they take the name and they're like, I guess we'll just apply it to a different kind of movie. Like, you know, for a recent live show, we watched the 90s Spawn movie. That episode is available only in the bonus content if you become a Max Fun member at MaximumFun.org/join. But this feels like more like
man
that.
Here. Where are you guys with these plugs?
Thank
this
you.
Man knows what he's doing.
This feels more like that, where it's like the same way that years ago, I think it was Golan Globus wanted to make a Spider-Man movie, and they thought that it was like Wolfman. So they kept wanting to make a movie about a kid who gets bitten by a spider and is turning into a giant spider. And that never got made, but it feels like this sits in that universe much better than it does in the current Marvel universe. So yeah, I think it's a good, bad movie. Go out and check it out. You'll have a great time.
Zhubin, I think you're raging the most. Let's go to you.
I hated this. Is very bad. I really want to get across how bad the dialogue was throughout this movie that made every scene so much more worse than fun. They had that very awful worst type of a Marvel. The worst thing to me about Marvel movies is this kind of quippy, snappy dialogue that characters always click into.
Yeah.
And they did that so bizarrely and jankily in scenes where like the girls were in the woods where they have just seen a very traumatic event and avoided being killed. They immediately snap into this kind of insulting like line. Let me guess, your dad is a hedge fund owner and your mom runs a Met Gala. Well, let me tell you something. You are a dorky girl, and they're like, don't say that. Don't try to high five me. That's not cool. All this kind of, and then they'll
sounds
switch
like
into
teens
this.
to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds good.
God, and then they'll switch into this like. All of a sudden, they'll be like, my mom is undocumented. That's why
the
I'm
fact
here.
That within an hour of meeting each other, they're like, we're sisters. We're in this together, all of us.
Yeah.
At the end, when they're like, Cassie, oh no, it's like, well, you've known this woman for less than a day.
You're saying
you know?
it speaks to a certain emotional instability that it should be more troubling than endearing.
Or just an emotion. It speaks to an unrealistic emotional wavelength. Yeah.
Yes, and because the thing Marvel cannot write characters that are funny because they do things in character. So they have to write characters that are always like half a foot out and try to make jokes. And I think the worst example of that was in that scene where that native wise man said that the thing about you can't see clearly until you look back in the past. And Dakota Johnson said something like, that sounds like the worst therapy session I've ever been to. And that to me is like, Marvel, if the characters can just be in this world and not constantly having to comment on this world, it would be a lot easier to have fun with it than if I have to sit there as Marvel like winks at me being like, hey, I know this is kind of weird.
Of course,
Now,
this is a different strain of Marvel. This is not the Marvel proper.
Yeah.
This is like produced in conjunction with Marvel, basically just because they co-own the property with Sony right now. But
this to me feels like a lot of Marvel movies have this level of everyone tries to be Tony Stark.
I will say when Marvel movies do that well, I think it works very well. And that's the kind of thing that since the 1960s has differentiated Marvel as a world from, say, DC, is that the characters always were like a slightly winkier. It was a little bit more like, can you believe this? But I agree that
not super serious like Booster Gold.
Well, Booster Gold is from many years later when DC had ingested some of that. But compared to the DC stories of the 1960s, which took themselves very seriously, the Marvel ones always had that Stanley like, well, folks, can you believe the web swinger's gotten himself into trouble again this time? Oh boy, get ready, action's a coming. But
I don't mind that in the situation, though. But for the characters to be so meta and self-aware,
I think a little bit of it goes a long way, and now there's too much of it, even in the Marvel proper movies. But I was going to say with Dan too, this, as Dan was saying, this is the Sony kind of like faux Marvel universe.
This is the knockoffs that you get at the outlet.
Well,
this is the Spider-Man without Spider-Man version of the Marvel
nailed that
universe.
annoying banter perfectly. Then they really got that element of it. I will say the only part of the movie I liked was the credits, which had the Cranberries' Dream playing over it, which to me is like always the end credit song for a 90s action movie. It's kind of a movie that it's kind of song that plays when like Tom Cruise and Ving Rhames are like, we got through the bank, huh? We did it. We did it. And I seen that play. I was like, oh yeah, this does feel like a late 90s, early 2000s movie. That was it. Bad until the end credits.
Let's close it out with some, I suspect, positivity from Stuart.
Oh boy, man, I love this shit. I watched 2 Venom movies and a Morbius movie, and I suffered through them just so I could get Madam Web. It's so it's not the kind of movie I would recommend to, say, a non-broken movie viewer.
Yes.
But it is, there's so much joy in the strangeness of it and how much of it doesn't work. But I don't know. I'm a big fan. I think Madam Web is a solid, good, bad movie.
Wow.
Check it out.
This is getting you excited for Kraven, the next in the Spider-Man without Spider-Man universe.
I mean, it's tough. I am not.
Kraven.
I mean. Who's the hunk in that one? Who's the hard body?
I don't know.
But is it Logan Marshall Green? Is that it's a 3-namer?
Oh, is it? Is it him? I don't know.
No, it's Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Another one. Aaron Taylor Johnson. Yeah, but hot hard body. I'm not. I don't know. I'm not as intrigued by his range or lack thereof as I am I'm not as excited about seeing him in a superhero movie as I was when I heard Dakota Johnson was going to have to appear concerned.
But does it help you to know that Russell Crowe will be appearing as Nikolai Kravinoff, Kraven's estranged father?
Okay, I'm excited about
which
that.
means he has to do an accent. He has to do an accent.
Have you seen the trailer? He does have an accent.
Yeah. Okay, I changed my mind. I'm excited for it.
Oh boy, we're having so much fun on the show today, aren't we, beloved listener? Yes. Well, the fun is only going to get more fun because I'm going to tell you more about all the great stuff you get when you go to MaximumFun.org/join.
Oh, the maximum amount of fun.
It's the maximum amount of fun. Extra strength fun. So this is the maximum. If you have more fun than this, you will die. So don't worry. We figured it out. Don't have more fun than this. The maximum fun. Now, don't think that when you support the Flophouse and Maximum Fun, that all you get is the same podcast you're already listening to. Oh, no, my sweet friends. No. We have made special things for members. Wondrous things. Precious things. It's called bonus content. And there's many hours of exclusive bonus content that only members can access. This year, we are adding a ton of bonus content. We've got the exclusive audio from our Los Angeles Spawn live show. Spawn, I say, sounding the most like I'm from New Jersey than I've ever sounded before. And we're doing a trilogy of episodes highlighting the work of Schlockmaster director Graydon Clark. We're doing, Joysticks, featuring the greatest character in film, King Vidiot. Lambada, The Forbidden Dance. And then what's the other one we're doing, Dan? Star Games?
Star Games is what I was looking at.
Okay, and I had forgotten it. I wasn't quite sure.
It's got a clown on the cover in a little like Phantom Zone triangle. I'm intrigued.
I'm there. These are whole Flophouse episodes you will only hear if you go to MaximumFun.org/join and become a Max Fun member. And when you pledge your support by joining at MaximumFun.org/join for as little as $5 a month, you don't just get access to the many hours of Flophouse bonus content, our role-playing games, our movie-length audio commentaries, and so forth. You also get access to all of the Max Fun bonus content from all of the shows. It's a lot of great stuff. It's like a whole hidden secret network of podcasts that you only get access to when you join the non-secret podcast network. You are going into the house of the autarch and you're finding the hidden secret house inside of that house where the autarch actually lives.
Yeah.
But even that's not all of the great stuff you can get by joining or upgrading your pledge. $10 a month level means the $10 a month pins are back. Yes, all members at the $10 a month level can get this year's Flophouse pin is a beautiful rendition of acclaimed filmmaker Werner Herzog saying his famous catchphrase, "I'm a bad little boy." Yep. I love the way it came out. Werner looks like such a little stinker. It's beautiful. You're going to want this pin. You can get it for joining at $10 a month. And for each membership level, you'll see on the website, there's a new thing that you get at $20 a month. You get either a hat or a bandana, and the bandana somehow doubles as a chessboard. At $35 a month, you get the largest tote bag in human history. Like you could fit a dog inside of it. It's a huge tote bag. Anyway,
or you could fit part of Jesse's thrift store purchases in.
My wife has a giant like burlap bag of rice that someone turned into a tote bag. This is bigger than that bag.
This is bigger. Yeah, it's enormous. Anyway, it goes all the way up to $200 a month where you can receive the fabled Max Fun treasure box. But that's the high levels. You don't have to worry about that if that's more than you can afford. But in addition, we've got a stretch goal, guys. A stretch goal means that if we reach a certain number of new or upgrading members, thank you, Dan. Dan put some stretching in for the visual component of the podcast.
Yeah.
If we reach 2,000 new or upgrading members for this drive, we're going to bring back our famous raffles. That's right. We will pick from the names of members, people to send out original Dan McCoy drawings. Are these going to be commissions, Dan? Are you going to ask them what they want and then give them what they want?
Yeah, I will give them what they want.
You'll steer them toward Pregnant Sonic.
I reserve a certain right of refusal, but pretty much, whatever.
You heard him, folks. Pregnant Sonic. Ask him for it. So you can get from me comic books from me, signed by me, some of my original books signed for you and sent to you. And Stuart, I think, has a package of Hinterlands and Minis merchandise.
Yeah. I'll send along T-shirts from one of my two bars, Minis or Hinterlands. You just say which and tell me the size, and it flies through the mail into your mail slot.
That's how the mail works. Yep. There's some extra steps in there, I think, but Stuart's not going to be delivering them by drone. So please keep in mind that you get additional great stuff, including no less than 4 new exclusive Flophouse episodes by going to MaximumFun.org/join and becoming a member for as little as $5 a month. Owning our own show, controlling our own show, knowing that we have an audience out there that enjoys our work, cares about it enough to contribute directly to keeping it alive is a truly wonderful, magical feeling. And now, as the industries that used to provide jobs and livelihoods for creative people seem to be going out of their way to smash themselves to pieces against the rocks of capitalism, it's even more important that shows like this have your support and the support of other listeners like you. Your support means we don't need to sell our souls to some enormous corporation. We don't have to twist ourselves into knots trying to guess what an algorithm thinks is funny. Your support means the Flophouse can stay the Flophouse with all of the idiocy that entails. I know that I take a lot of pleasure and a lot of pride in being a Max Fun member myself, and in the other ways I can directly support artists whose work is meaningful to me. It makes me proud that by supporting Max Fun as a member, I keep the show from being tucked behind a paywall or filled with tons and tons of advertisements, just a little bit of advertisements. It means it can be available for those who can't afford to pay that monthly fee. So please share that pride with me. Help keep our show alive by going to MaximumFun.org/join and pledging your support for as little as $5 a month. That's one less king-sized Kit Kat at the movie theater per month. You can do without that for the show you love. Come on. Yeah. MaximumFun.org/join. I'll be back with more Max Fun Drive stuff later in the episode. But now, let's get back to the regular flop stuff. Dan, take it away.
Let us move on to letters from listeners like you, the listeners. Hey, this one's from, who is it from? Nathan. Nathan, last name withheld. And Nathan writes, you mentioned Winnie the Pooh, and it reminded me that I've been wanting to share an experience I had with my kids several years ago. It started with me innocently deciding they could watch the Tigger movie. They like Winnie the Pooh, and though I didn't remember the plot details, I figured it would be 90 minutes of cheap entertainment. Smash cut to me giving a deadpan look to the invisible camera as we finish the movie and two of my children are weeping because Tigger never found his family. I then tried to explain the trope of the, quote, inherently unique character looks for his family and finds that his friends are his real family.
Mm-hmm.
As my daughter angrily wailed to my wife in the other room, his friends was his family the whole time. It hit me that this was a flop-worthy story. Although the message that friends can be family is a great one, in that moment, I wish that for once, Tigger, Gonzo, or King Kong could just actually find their goddamn family. You've all answered many questions about movie tropes in the past. I guess the slight twist on this one, are there good movie tropes that you would be okay with never seeing again? Keep up the wall-to-wall flopping. Nathan, currently 68 miles east of Topeka, Kansas.
Oh, I mean, he didn't even give us his thoughts on it. All right, okay.
I think the trailers for the new Godzilla X Kong movie, it looks like there's a bunch of Kongs in it. So he's going to find his family.
Yeah.
There's like little ones and like a big evil one. And we all know his real family. His real brother, that's Godzilla, baby.
Yep, that's why they're running from an explosion or something in the Riggs and Murtaugh style.
Guys, I love it.
I saw that trailer and I was like, I hope I can watch this in the right spirit of this is goofy nonsense.
You see Godzilla trucking and you're like, man, look at those thighs. Ooh, mama.
The idea of Godzilla running or moving fast is such a change for the character.
Mm.
But to answer the question, do you have one, Dan?
Well, I don't have a great one. I was thinking of like, there's a trope that I enjoyed very much the first time I saw it in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where like the character is held at gunpoint. You hear a gunshot, you think the character has been shot, and it turns out it's someone else shooting the person who is threatening our hero. In that case, Karen Allen, of course, shooting the Nazi or maybe the Sherpa that the Nazis hired who want to.
He can be both. He can be a Nazi Sherpa.
And, and that is, it's Spielberg. It was the first time I saw that trope. It may predate him, but like that was like the best staged version of it that I've seen. And so it's not like I dislike it, but now it's just been done so much. I'm like, yeah, it's not, they didn't shoot the guy that's our hero. I get it. Like I'm not surprised that someone else is going to pop out of nowhere having a shot.
I have a similar thing where, so I think the first time I saw this was in The Dark Knight when Joker gets captured, but he wanted to get captured. It's part of his plan. And then I saw, I think, 7 movies or something in a row after that where the bad guy gets captured on purpose as part of his plan. And I was like, this no longer counts as like a twist when I expect it to come.
Like in Oppenheimer, when Oppenheimer got captured and it was all part of his plan. Just so he could talk shit to Robert Downey Jr. Okay, whatever movie.
But it feels like that to me. That's another one where I was like, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's a good twist. And then it showed up in which James Bond movie was it with Javier Bardem? But like
Skyfall. Yeah, and it was in the Star Trek Beyond
Beyond Benedict.
Which is not Star Trek Bound, Into Darkness.
Yeah, it just shows into so many different movies, and I was like, all right, okay, so this is the new thing du jour that all the movies do, and I quickly got very tired of it. So that's the one for me. I would be okay never seeing it again, but it is a fun idea the first time as a twist in a movie.
Yeah, I mean, a trope where you have twins and then they get involved in some kind of like erotic series of manipulations and twists. Actually, no, I want to see a lot more of those.
That's a trope I feel like you could do more of. Yeah, you could use more of, yeah.
How about when the quiet wimp turns out to be super tough? Or when the granny starts rapping. I love that.
You're right. But that's one I hate too. The one where it's like,
gone for a while though.
That person can do that, which goes at least as far back as the Errol Flynn Robin Hood, when like Friar Tuck turns out to be really good fighting. Like it's that I'm not a huge fan. Or in the Bratz movie, when the nerdy guy turns out to know martial arts. You know, you don't need that stuff. It's enough of that.
Yeah.
I couldn't actually. When I was thinking about this, I was trying to think like, what are tropes that I can like think of that I like, and maybe think like actually it would be nice if there was a rule that said that if you were to engage, if you were to write a trope in a movie, you had to very explicitly name the trope. So if there was like a Legend of Bagger Vance kind of situation, the white character would have to say like, "Oh, thank God, the magical Negro is here to help me out." But that would be a lot more helpful to be like, "I know what I'm about to see now."
It's like in every movie that's like. Every movie that's like Groundhog Day, where they don't say, "Oh, it's like Groundhog Day. What's happening?"
Yes, yeah. This is You can see. Well, there'll be a twist later, maybe, but mostly it's just going to be this.
Groundhog Day.
That would be nice.
The one that came to mind just now is also this, and I don't know if this is a trope I like. Actually, this might be just something I'm tired of seeing, where the heroes in a movie will be mowing down the cannon fodder of the villain, just destroying them, and then when it's time to kill the villain, they're like, "No." Because we're heroes. We don't do that. Like that, most recently I saw that in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I was like, oh, so you'll just kill everyone who works for the High Evolutionary, but the High Evolutionary, the bad guy, who's causing all the trouble, you're a hero, so you can't touch him. Or in Rise of Skywalker, where he's like, the Emperor's like, Rey, if you kill me now, you'll become a bad guy. And she's like, oh, I guess I can't. I guess I'll just kill the thousands of child slaves that were forced to be in your army. Like, terrible. Take out the bad guy.
There's also a that call to morality that the villain makes when they're like, but what kind of a hero are you after you've killed so many people in your quest? I'm always like, yeah, well, you sent those people. I didn't kill them like on my own. There was an army that I had to
just
like
hanging out
shoot.
And like, you know what I feel like is
you sent them in my way. I'm not the bad guy here.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see a villain say, we're very different, you and I. We don't have a lot in common.
Yeah.
We think different things and we act in different ways. In many ways, it makes sense that we'd be on opposing sides of this issue.
Though we both believe that we are right, in the end, you're probably more right because I'm the bad guy.
It's certainly easier to make an argument for your side of the issue. You know what? You convinced me. I'm not going to be a bad guy anymore. And the hero's like, this worked out great. This is fantastic.
Oh, boy. I wish we had did this before I put you into the slowly descending into lava trap that I can't remember.
Yeah. Classic hero move.
This next is from John, last name withheld. John with no H. Maybe it's Jon Stewart. Who knows?
Could be. Would be unlike him, but it's possible.
Howdy, floppers.
Yeah, that sounds like John. That does sound like Jon Stewart.
Yeah,
that's exactly what you always say.
Do it in his voice.
Over the last few years, we've been hearing about Marvel fatigue and the lackluster response to several big budget blockbusters, and it has me thinking.
BBB, big budget blockbusters.
In the 60s, there was a fatigue over big event movies, which led to a boom of smaller budget or independent movies like The Graduate and Easy Rider. This was coupled with more eyes on foreign fare like The Battle of Algiers, The Bicycle Thief, and Blow Up. In the 90s, this happened again with movies like Reservoir Dogs, Clerks, and Slacker, along with a boom for foreign movies like Chungking Express and John Woo films. My question is, do you think we're in line for another boom period in foreign or independent cinema with films like Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, X, Shiva Baby, and more gaining a lot of traction as independent films, along with foreign films like Drive My Car, The Worst Person in the World, and Titane. I don't know that Titane was the monster hit that...
I mean, there's a monster in it. There's a metal baby.
I think there's a chance we could see another interesting time in film soon.
I also love mentioning Drive My Car and Titan in the same sentence.
Very similar movies, very similar feelings they evoke. Yeah.
So what do you think? Is this possible, or am I living in the film lover's bubble? Keep on flopping in the free world. I mean, anything's possible.
Everything's possible. I mean, so here's my thinking on this. I mean, there is a blow up in foreign stuff, but it's mostly in television. Foreign television has made inroads, thanks mainly to Netflix, into American homes in a way that it never has before.
Yeah.
Non-English language television is now so much more prevalent and mainstream than it ever was in the American mainstream culture. That being said, it feels like the time should be right for a blow up in independent and small budget movies, because the resources to make them are right there, especially with AI, which I do not like because it takes jobs away from people. But if you are a small budget independent filmmaker, I'm sure it's a godsend in many ways, because you can do things you never could have done before. In theory, distribution through the internet or streaming sites should make it easier for these kinds of movies to reach people the way they did in the 90s through video, or through kind of independent theaters and things like that in the 60s and 70s. But at the same time, I don't know. It feels like it is harder and harder to get people to watch that stuff in some ways. And I think as long as those main platforms are algorithmically driven and not driven by human curation, it's going to be harder for people to find or be directed to different type of stuff, indie stuff or original stuff. Maybe some foreign stuff, but the foreign stuff that feels like things that are already being, like, as much as I enjoyed so much of RRR, I think that was partly a hit because it's the kind of movie that people are already watching. It's essentially a superhero movie, just kind of like a bigger and kind of slightly different superhero movie. And I think it's going to be harder for people to find those things because our outlets are so much harder to, the ways that people find movies now are so controlled by programs designed to give them the same thing over and over again, as opposed to the old days when you would look like in a newspaper listing and you might see other stuff, or you'd watch a TV show like Siskel and Ebert and they'd introduce you to stuff. Like, there's less of that now, and it's less prevalent, which makes it difficult. So that's my theory on it. I hope I'm wrong.
I mean, I feel like there's definitely like an explosion of like lower budget stuff. I think what we're not going to get is mid budget stuff. I feel like mid budget stuff has gone away forever.
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
Especially like anything of any kind of a budget that's geared toward like drama. Like, I feel like so much of that type of stuff is being pushed toward television.
Yeah.
Like things that they could be like, can we just turn this into like an HBO like 10 episode series instead of a movie or whatever? Just makes so much more sense on the business side of things. But I don't know. I'm the least involved in the business out of the four of us. So
yeah, I mean, I think
in some ways Dan is the least involved in the business of the four of us.
Bursts into tears. No, I think I mean I see what this letter writer is getting at, and I do think that lately, like, the stuff that has been bubbling to the surface a bit has been different stuff than we've seen for, like, at least the last 8 years, say, before. Like it really was a period where only one type of blockbuster was dominant, and like now there's stuff that's big IP, like still big IP like Barbie, or of course Oppenheimer, the biggest IP that there is. But I do think that what I've seen kind of getting attention now, like there is a turn away towards smaller, different films, maybe. So,
maybe.
I don't know.
I'd be curious if that's happening in the world you're plugged into or the world at large. Because I think the issue is not that people aren't making those movies necessarily, and the issue is not that people don't want to see those movies. The issue is the corporate layer in between that needs to be convinced that there's a profitable reason to show those movies.
Like a lot of these movies do show up now on streaming. It's just that the problem is streaming is kind of a black hole that, like, you toss content into, and unless something catches fire for a very specific reason, it may as well not exist.
Yeah.
Compared to, like, even in the old days, like if you put a small movie in an independent theater, like it could get big reviews and become a hit that way, and that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, Dan's still upset about the fate of Ricky Stenicki, just disappearing into the Amazon
just didn't
hole.
get a chance. Just didn't get the chance to catch him on. Zhubin, I know you love Ricky Stanicki.
No, I didn't. The name was funny to me, so I laughed.
You're like, tell me more. I feel like that's the purpose of the name, is for it to be funny, and that's the title of the movie.
No, it's a very serious movie. Very serious, yeah.
Hey, let's make some recommendations of movies that we've seen, we've enjoyed. Be positive about a thing.
Well, I was super positive about Madam Web. I think it rules. But I'm also going to recommend another movie that I saw.
Do it.
That's probably going to scratch a similar Madam Web style itch, or maybe not. I'm going to recommend a movie called Love Lies Bleeding. That's right. It is a little neo-noir set in the 80s. And in the world of bodybuilding, you got Kristen Stewart. You got Ed Harris sporting the best haircut and the leatheriest face. You got Katie O'Brien sporting the hardest body I've ever seen. She looks incredible. It's like gross and super hot and like funny and weird.
The movie.
Yeah, her body's
the way
incredible.
You said it made it sound like
it
you
did
were
sound like her body was gross.
Commenting on.
Yeah.
I mean, all bodies are gross. But what a picture! It's like weird and funny, and it's great to see this director who made Saint Maud kind of get to stretch her arms a little bit and like have a little bit more budget and still bring that kind of like dreamy sensibility to like a larger palette and or a larger canvas. And the performances are a ton of fun. Thumbs up. Love this thing. It was great. I was itching to go to the gym right after.
I'm going to quickly recommend, for old time's sake, a movie I saw on the plane recently.
That was the plane you took to Detroit so you could masturbate yourself into a stupor at the Love Lies Bleeding screening like a weirdo? Did you guys see that like viral news story? Some guy got drunk and jacked off and passed out in the theater.
Yeah.
That wasn't you, is what you're saying.
No, it's not to my knowledge.
I mean, to me, if it was you, you wouldn't remember. That's the thing. Yeah.
No, I watched Desperately Seeking Susan, a movie that I realized watching it on the plane, like I had seen all of, but maybe just like in bits and pieces over the years. But I'm like, I'd never seen but it was good to see it all in the correct order, all at once. I enjoyed it.
Not the memento version of Desperately Seeking Susan.
Yeah.
It has a lot of the same sort of squares encounter downtown bohemians flavor as two of my personal favorites, After Hours and Something Wild. I feel like it doesn't have quite the screwball snap at the end that I wanted out of it, but it has like the vibe that I enjoyed. But I also wanted to recommend, now having recommended a movie so that Stuart doesn't make fun of me, I want to recommend the television program Deadlock, which Audrey and I recently watched all of.
Yeah, it's great.
An Australian show. It's on Amazon Prime right now. I feel like I've seen a little bit of buzz around it, but not as much as I think it deserves, considering that I think it is both a genuinely funny comedy where like the comedy comes out of super well observed characters being well played, and also a genuine engaging mystery thriller where like it keeps you guessing up something and you're actually excited to see the denouement, which is a hard thing to mix those two things together. And it's also a bunch of queer creators, and that's a big part of the story as well. If that's something you're looking for in your media, I'd say check out.
And it's set in Tasmania.
Deadlock. Yeah.
Oh, so you know that a certain devil's going to show up, our old buddy Taz.
Elliot, why don't we give the last recommendation to Zhubin, and why don't you go?
Oh, okay, sure. I'm going to recommend a movie from 1983. Well, hold on one moment there, Elliot. I think it's. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you come here. It's, the NBC newsman Tom Brokaw is here. I apologize, everybody.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah. Elliot, I was passing by the neighborhood as I often do while you're recording, just in case I have an invitation to show up, as I do now. I don't remember inviting you. Like even a vampire needs an invitation. Well, I'm worse than a vampire in many ways. I'm a newsman, and I couldn't help but hear that you mentioned a movie from 1983, even though this past weekend you saw a certain film called Dune Part 2. I had assumed when I saw you in the theater after hacking into the security cameras, much like Ezekiel Sims in the film Madam Web, that you would be recommending it on this episode. And yet I find that you're not recommending it. Is it did you not like the film? Because I found it transporting. No, I did like it very much, but it's just it's gotten enough attention. It's a huge movie, so I thought I'd recommend a smaller thing. Well, perhaps then I could just stay here and talk about Dune 2 for a couple hours. I don't think you can right now. I mean, we're near the end of the episode. I've got a pretty open schedule. I'm retired now. Perhaps I could come back next week and talk about Dune Part 2. I don't know about next week. We're going to have Jamel Bowie on next week as our guest. We're going to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 2 because he's our Hedgehog correspondent. So I think we're kind of booked for next week. Well, as I said, my calendar is quite open right now. I have a few more screenings of Dune Part 2 penciled in. Perhaps I could appear the week after that and talk to you about Dune Part 2.
I'm taking a hint.
You know, if that's the way it has to be, then okay, if you want to come back in 2 weeks and you can talk to us about Dune Part 2, I just worry it won't be in the national zeitgeist the way it is right now, but I'll take that. It's always in my zeitgeist. You might say that I've never taken off the still suit. I'm still wearing it right now. Okay, well, if you could, I don't know how you got in my house. This is making me uncomfortable, but if you could come back in a couple weeks and we'll talk about it. I will do that. I will. And he's backing away slowly now.
That was a nice break for the three of us.
I can't believe you.
That was. I apologize, everybody. Anyway, I'll recommend my movie quickly then. My movie is from 1983. It's called Testament. It's a drama film directed by Lynn Littman about a small town in the aftermath of a nuclear blast that happens close enough that they are experiencing the radiation poisoning from it, but not so close that there are explosions and things are on fire and stuff like that. And she is the mother of a suburban family. Her husband is played by the main character is played by Jane Alexander. She was nominated for an Academy Award for this performance, and she's married to William Devane. William Devane goes off on a business trip, and there's an explosion of some kind, and it dawns on people that there's been a nuclear war, and now the town kind of has to make do on its own. And it's a very kind of quiet, sad movie that felt very real to me, both about the effects of that kind of thing, but also the feelings you go to when your family is in danger and you don't know what to do about it, but not in a like Halle Berry in Abducted kind of way, or whatever that movie is called, but in a real way of like,
I think it was Kidnap. Was it?
Oh, Kidnapped, was that it?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Just Kidnap.
There's when there's a real threat to your family that is big, and there's nothing you can do about it, and how you accommodate yourself to that. And I found it was a movie that I saw. It was one of the movies that I've seen recently where it got the strongest kind of like real emotional response for me, where I'm like, I'm genuinely crying at this movie. This movie is hitting me hard, and it's doing it in a very quiet, calm way. And so I was very impressed by it. So that's called, and I'm a sucker for post-nuclear war, everybody dying from radiation sickness stuff. So to see one where I was like, oh, this is really getting me.
Favorite genre.
I love it. You know me. To see one that really was felt like it was tugging my heartstrings in a very honest way was a big, was something I was very excited to see. So that's Testament from 1983.
That's also a very annoying movie trope where a nuclear bomb goes off and everyone dies. That's
Yeah. I mean, come on, get over it.
Yeah. Overdone. How about the one where it's the nuclear bomb goes off and no one cares?
And
It's
there's
fine.
confetti inside.
Nuclear confetti.
And so, yeah, it was a party. Zhubin, do you have anything you want to recommend?
Well, because it's Nowruz, I feel like I should recommend an Iranian movie, which I haven't seen any lately. But I have been playing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown on PlayStation 5, which I would recommend. It's a very fun Metroidvania-style video game. Also, you can have the characters be voiced in Persian, which is great because I'm learning a lot of new Persian terms for like time crystals and things my aunts never taught me how to say in Persian. I would say if you want to go a little bit back, there's a very wonderful Iranian film called Hit the Road, which came out a couple of years ago by I forget his name, but he's the son of a famous director called Jeff Apatow. And it's about a family taking a road trip, mostly seen through the eyes of like the young 8-year-old son who's on a trip with his mom and dad and like his older draft age eligible brother. And as they're going on this road trip, the boy does not know what the purpose of the road trip is, but you sort of begin getting a sense of what the purpose of the road trip is and why the family is doing it. And it's a perfectly Iranian movie in that it's a very sweet and fun story that has a very bittersweet theme behind it that becomes prevalent if you know, as you watch. So I would recommend Hit the Road. I would recommend never watching any movie ever again after seeing Madame Web, because I think that at that point
it's a failed art form.
The art form is gone. Yeah, I feel like it's sort of
if this is what 100 years of film was leading to, then we could just shut the door. You know, it shouldn't have ever happened.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a kind of the debates the Germans had after World War II were like, if this all led up to Hitler, what was the point of any of it? And I think that the exact same idea and stakes.
Good closing to an episode.
I mean, that's the way I'm going to feel. That's the way I'm going to feel if Trump wins presidential election in 2020 this year. I'm going to be like, okay, the American experiment failed. They were wrong. We should do it a different way. You know,
it's time now for a higher American experiment with Caesardom.
Wait, are you saying that everyone gets high? That's the experiment.
Oh man,
I'm way ahead of you.
Has there ever been a whole country on weed?
You see, it's gonna be. Let's try it.
Yeah, let's do it. I guess.
Yeah, so that's Madam Web, guys. That's our Madam Web episode.
We did it.
I want to thank our producer, Alex Smith. He goes by the name Howell Doughty all over the internet. You can find his various other enterprises. Thank you for editing and making us sound good and all that stuff. I want to thank Zhubin for, normally Zhubin doesn't have to do anything for an episode, and now we made him watch Madam Web.
Please let me just play a rich dog again.
Yeah,
in some ways this was much less work than he normally has to do, so in some ways it was much more work than he normally has to do.
Yeah, he seems to enjoy the other work more. But is there anything you want to plug, Zhubin? Anything you want to say before we, end this part of the episode?
No, watch the Daily Show. Jon Stewart on Mondays, our correspondents on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. Keep on watching it. Subscribe to cable again. I think a lot of the collapse of the television and film industries can be blamed on you, the viewer and listener who stopped subscribing to cable. So please go back and pay those exorbitant rates again. We need it.
All right. Well, thank you.
I feel like, Zhubin, you managed to have this persona that is like lovably hostile. Can't help but being lovable, even though you're saying mean things all the time and directly confrontational.
I'm just speaking truth.
So much.
Thank you so much, as Dan just said. And as the show comes to an end and we take down the old circus tent and hose the grease paint off the floors, I'd like to take one last time this episode. We used a lot of grease paint, Dan. It's all over the floors.
The clowns falling all over the place.
They're doing the worm.
Smeared their faces. Yep, exactly. I'd like to take one last time this episode to talk about the Max Fun Drive. But I'm not just jumping straight to asking you for money. First, I want to thank you. Just the way that we were thanking Zhubin for being here, I want to thank you for going to MaximumFun.org/join and becoming a member of Max Fun while you were listening to this episode. Or thank you for already being a member of MaximumFun.org and upgrading or boosting your membership. Or thank you for already being a member and continuing to support us at the level you're already at. Or if you haven't already gone to MaximumFun.org/join, then thank you for doing it right now, before you forget. Right now. Now. Go do it. Right now. But above all, even if you can't do all that, thank you, as Dan said earlier in the show, for listening. You know, Dan, Stewart, and I, we originally got into podcasting as kind of a hobby. And I know I've always been so grateful that it turned into a thing that brings some money into our lives. It was helpful during downtimes when we were having financial trouble. We've all had those at different points. And I hate to admit it, but this right now is just about the downest of downtimes. Television work is very hard to come by right now, not just for us goofballs, but for most of our profession. But thanks to you and your support and your joining and upgrading and boosting, we can keep ourselves afloat during this time. I feel like we are extra grateful, extra gratitudely grateful, or at least I am, for your support during this time. Speaking very honestly.
I'm extra grateful. Don't try and take... I'm the one.
I'm the most grateful. Dan, I'm
extra grateful.
I'm grateful times infinity.
Checkmate, I guess.
Yeah, there's always infinity plus one. Speaking very honestly and purely for myself, your support at MaximumFun.org/join, even if you only join for $5 a month, is another brick in the wall between me and real financial trouble. That's a $5 brick that you're sticking in that wall, and I appreciate it. Your membership doesn't just keep the show going, it keeps me and my family going. So I really want to thank you for that. It means so much to me that this dumb show, that also means so much to me, also means enough to you for you to pledge your hard-earned $5 a month. And as Dan mentioned earlier, if you can't afford to join right now, we understand times are tough right now for almost everyone who is not actively working to tear apart civilization or whose family is not already rich to begin with. Those two categories overlap quite a bit right now. Thank you just for listening. If you can't join right now, how about recommending the show to someone? Maybe like a wealthy friend who likes to bankroll dumb movie podcasts. Like if you know anyone like that, or just recommend it to someone you think will enjoy it. But if you feel like you can afford it, please go to MaximumFun.org/join and try out a membership for $5 a month. Drink in all that bonus content that's already there and eagerly await the bonus content that we'll be adding throughout the year. We need your support. We really appreciate that you're giving that support to us. And so now I'd like to close this episode with a little oration that I think we'll all find meaningful. You know, Dan and Stu, 23 years ago, our floppers brought forth on this network a new podcast. Technically, it wasn't on this network, but we joined eventually. Conceived in silliness and dedicated to the proposition that not all movies are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great Max Fun drive, testing whether that podcast or any podcast so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met in an episode of that drive. We have come to ask your support in going to MaximumFun.org/join and contributing as little as $5 a month as a pledge for those who need to make a living so that this podcast might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot take the credit for this podcast. It is you, the generous supporters at all levels of membership, who by going to MaximumFun.org/join have perpetuated it far above our poor power to add or detract. Whoever gives out podcasting awards will little note nor long remember what I say here, but it can never ignore what you did here. It is for us, the hosts rather, to be dedicated here to keep creating the series which you have thus far so nobly advanced. We must be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from you honored members, we take increased devotion to that cause for which you went to MaximumFun.org/join and gave at least $5 a month. That we here highly resolve that we will keep watching bad movies and then talking about them and then judging them in categories that often don't really apply that well to the movie we watched. They did this time, but not always. That thanks to your support at MaximumFun.org/join, this podcast, Under Cage, shall somehow keep going on for another decade or more, and that a house of the flop, by the flop, and for the flop shall not perish from this earth. Thank you.
Thunderous applause.
You guys also have you guys sound like preschool parents too, actually.
Yeah.
All the silent auctions and raffles.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But our baby is a podcast that has gotten slightly less dumb over time.
But I want it to continue to be exactly as much or more profitable. So let's
just like a baby.
Yep.
That I sold to the workhouse. And here we go.
For sale, one baby from Dan. That's a six-word story. Yeah.
For sale, one baby for profit.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
supported
directly
by you.